Well, hello and welcome. This is very much lastminute.com impromptu rise. Still putting it out there to the networks. Hello and welcome, dear brother Regan. It's an honor to meet you. How are you doing?
Nice to meet you too. So should I call you Franklin or Bush Whisperer?
You can call me Franklin. I am the Bush Whisperer, but my name is Franklin. Bush Whisperer is just sort of a, I don't know what you call it. Is it a tag? If I was a kid with a can of spray paint, I'd be the Bush Whisperer, yeah?
Nice. Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's I spent a lot of time in the wild, so the bush is close to my heart. So we're gonna be having an interesting conversation here today. I think this is like a really on point conversation. I think Chris is busy putting out some information. I mean, some links. I just got down from the mountain for my little boy. Namaste. How you doing, dear brother Chris?
What's up, brother? Yeah, I'm about to share this out on mine too.
Good, man. I hope my audio is okay.
Yeah, you sound good.
Good. Everything was going wrong. I was trying to get on. Google was like not responding. Nothing was working. But this is how it is, sometimes. So the controlled demolition of the West. I'm going to go on to Telegram while you guys are introducing yourselves. Do please say a little bit about yourselves. I'm really honored to have Regan here. You come highly recommended from Chris. So bombs away. Let's fly into the eye of the storm, as it were. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Regan. Much love, man.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate it, Chris. Always good to be talked up.
It's good to hear from you, by the way, brother. It's been a while.
Yeah, no kidding. So I hail from Detroit, Michigan, although I've lived all over the Midwest and traversed most of North America. Definitely grew up, kind of in that middle ground of the rural areas and the cities, and I definitely spent about half my time in the woods and half my time in front of screens most of my life. And I don't know, I think even from a very early age, I kind of saw through a lot of stuff in the school systems and through parents and family members. I had a very, very large family. I still do. There's 100, 150 relatives just in the Detroit area. So lots and lots of experiences and travels and discussions. And, as far as learning and education, I grasped on to everything. There's very few things that I don't enjoy learning about or discussing or trying out. And it was a very lonely road for a long time. I actually didn't meet Chris and many of the other people here until only 5 or 6 years ago.
Like right at the beginning of lockdowns and stuff and all the craziness back in 2020. Same with Silas,
Yeah. So, and I mean, I think we're all kind of on some similar communities here and there, throughout the years, I'm sure. But,
yeah,
I don't think we ever kind of got into these types of groups. If you brought up any of the topics we typically discuss, most people just shoved you off, called you crazy, cut you off. So,
And Regan, do you have a YouTube now or no?
I mean, I have the YouTube account that I comment and watch everyone's stuff on and everything. So that video that Silas posted, that was like my presentation.
Do you want me to put up a link in my description for you to anywhere?
Yeah, sure, if you like.
Yeah, give me a link.
I'll give you a link to what Silas has. But I was going to post that on my YouTube. I just wanted to put it up with some more videos, so there's a little more context to like.
Well, I'll link your YouTube, because I usually put Silas in the link anyway, because half the time he shows up and half the time he doesn't. Whenever because he's been dealing with school and stuff like that, still trying to get his degree.
Yeah, no, I know. I just talked to him the other day. He's in and out.
So what's your YouTube? I'm about to link it and put this live on my channel right now.
Am I doing this all through?
You can literally
Telegram?
post it in here as well, by the way. if you just put the link in the comments, but not in the private
Oh, yeah.
comments, comments, then I can flash it on the screen, and then everybody can take a look at it.
Put it in
But Joe, I
private.
imagine you've got a tag like an at.
Yeah,
At-
what's the at tag? Because I already have everything else typed out, and then I'm gonna hit live on my channel as well.
Yeah, let me do my thing. I haven't really used this much. There.
Yeah, well, dear brother
There you
Chris,
go.
how have you been, man? Have you been rolling? Have you been rocking?
Trying
Been
to,
writing any
man.
new songs?
Actually just started writing again for the first time with my buddy Johnny 2 days ago. So I think I told you that I was gonna be playing some music, and then
You
before
didn't told me that. No.
Oh yeah, just like I had a day where I was going to be doing some music, and then I had to go right back to like editing nonstop, and it was just like
Wow.
it's been madness with the editing.
Trust me
God,
to pick
this
up on it. You kept that one a secret, brother. Well, I'm happy to hear that, man. For those of you that haven't checked his music out, go and check out his channel. It's pretty fly. He's an awesome singer, and yeah, you should go and check out his music. Yeah, he's not with the
Thank
band
you,
he used to
thank
be
you.
with, but he's doing his own thing. I'm sure he's probably writing more unplugged stuff these days, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, starting to try to get back to doing some solo stuff, and we'll see. And now with my buddy who I've known since forever, he was in bands in New Jersey around the time I was too, and we just miss it. So we're trying to see if we could throw some work together. So should be maybe some new stuff out soon. We'll see. Otherwise, man, just been working, trying to survive. How are you, Franklin?
I think you went on mute for a sec. He's doing something. Wow. Can't hear your microphone.
You muted Franklin.
Yep. Can't hear you.
Yeah, I still can't. Had to
Keep
restart.
going.
What so while he restarts that. Wait, are you restarting, Franklin? Yeah?
Hello?
There you go.
Hello?
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Yep.
That's
there
so
you are.
weird. I had to go and it put on echo cancellation, and it changed me back to the old
It did
camera.
that to me that one time. And then the audio was horrible for like all of the whole show, the rest of the show after it did that for me. It's a pain in the ass.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch cameras in a minute. But for now, I'm just going to go with this weird camera that's all crappy. Not quite sure why this is happening to me. It's a bummer trip, but anyway, I'll sort my camera out in a minute. So yeah, man, it's exciting times we're in. I think we're moving through a fundamentally powerful shift in the world. Are those bunnies in the background disturbing the audio, or are we good to go?
Good to
No,
go.
Yeah, you're fine, man.
Okay, because I give them boxes, and they made them a mansion out of cardboard boxes to play in, and they're shredding through it and changing the shape of their mansion. So yeah, man, controlled demolition. I've been watching this now for the past actively watching it for the last quarter century. And it seems like we're all on track, you know. I was talking about this just recently with what's going on with regards to the financial terrorism that we've been experiencing, and obviously they keep changing the playing field. My feelings about the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency, which is why I didn't buy in like more 20 years ago when everybody was like saying to me, buy in, dude, buy in. I was like, yeah, I don't want to be part of the destruction of society. They were like, what do you mean? You're going to make money? I was like, yeah, they just want to get our cash out of our hands, dude. They want to take our gold away. They want to take our cash away. They want us to be like hooked onto digital. That's the goal, because they want us to become transhumanist. And that's really what this is all about. And now you see I only just realized this last week that the BRICS has grown. So we've got like a whole lot more countries in BRICS now. BRICS is now 9 countries.
Jeez.
And they talk about Iran joining BRICS. There's talk about other. So this is basically shifting the economy from the Western economy of the fiat that we've been used to a new form of fiat that's half gold, half fiat based. And I think it's a big part of the demolition, which you can see like the trumpeter and the musketeer all aligning themselves with, like, quickly, let's go and find the money we lost. You know, there's desperation under those actions. Nobody understands. Everybody's like knocking him. They don't understand. Like, these dudes don't really have a choice. Like, the money game is big. The G7 is now running less than 30%. BRICS is running more than 35% of GDP. Give it 40% by the end of the year. Easy peasy. I wouldn't be surprised. Give it another 5 years. We're talking 60% of the GDP of the planet. And by then, like, the G7 economy will have to have gone over to the BRICS economy, and that's sort of moving the power from the West to the East. I mean, what do you guys think about this? Are we all going to have to learn to speak Chinese and Russian?
Hold on 1 second. I'll be right back in this conversation. Silas just messaged he might come join too.
Awesome. But to your point, Bush Whisperer, yes, I do think we're looking at a huge power flux. I think the time of the West is coming to an end. Whether it was scripted or it's built in naturally, that I think that could be argued either way, but it does seem to be going that way. I would say I've also been watching this about the last quarter century, all the way, from Y2K. And I mean, there was events prior and shortly after that are also very significant, but you had the dot-com bubbles, and like you were saying, the whole digital revolution. 100 years ago, we had the Industrial Revolution. Well, here we are 100 years later. And I truly believe no matter how you rewrite history or what winners come out on top and write the books, these cycles are natural. They're innate to the human species and how we operate, what we do. So every 100 years, every 25, every 500, every millennia, we go through these big transitions, big changes, and they've probably been considered things like floods, deluges, the whole world burning in fire. I mean, these are all just descriptors of, you could say end of the world scenarios. Well, for a mass majority, it would appear that way. And so I think we're kind of moving that way. And like you said, with
But by natural, you mean, I know you don't mean fully natural, but you mean like there's really no stopping it, more so.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I figured you meant.
So you have the powers that be can make claims that they're the ones that are moving the wheel, when in reality, the wheel just turns. It's always turning.
Yeah, it could be that. I mean, part of me is like,
that they've hijacked the occult knowledge.
Yeah.
They're riding the
But
wheel
I mean,
of
I guess it's so weird because it's like, I mean, I could see it both ways, because I'm sure like if you ask someone like Steiner, he'd be like, this is going to happen no matter what, but it's going to happen because of the choices that it's like that idea of the question between destiny and fate. And like, which one is this? Is this like, are we destined for this to continue to happen, or is it our fate for this to happen? Like, do we have some control in it happening, or is it just going to happen no matter what we do?
I think the answer is like yes and no. The problem is that we're born into this place of paradox in the first place. You already have duality. That's like how creation even works, right? You have two parents, mate, creates one.
Yeah.
So 1 + 1 = 1.
We were actually just talking about this last time we did a show 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it almost always comes up, right? I mean, the male, the female, and the way that we exist here and how we understand things. I mean, that's how measurement works. It's from A to B, male to female, black and white. That's just how we look at it. And that's what I mean, where like yes, we have the influence, you know. Is it fate or destiny? Well, it just depends on your perception of what's going on and what you actually see. But I think that the cycles of like what's occurring will happen naturally regardless because it's innate to the human. So yes, that inherently means human influence. You see what I mean? Like we're always going to come into communities and grow into kind of these mega cities and complexes and stuff like that, and then it'll eventually become corrupt and break down and fall back into pieces, go back into a more agricultural tribalist, like, you know, maybe not entirely, it's not like going back to the Stone Age, but it all falls down or it just simply moves, right? The west falls and it moves to the east, right? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just a depressing way to think about it.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's fucking depressing. It's
But
hard
but
to.
what would perpetual happiness be?
Well, yeah, obviously, perpetual utopia is fucking depressing too. So it's
Yeah. I'd
it's
rather
not
get a
really.
little bit of both rather than just endless horrificness, you know.
But I guess it's like that. I mean, I feel like it always comes back to this. And I think Franklin probably got booted off again, and he's trying to get back on.
Yeah.
And Silas said he's going to join us in 30, so he's eating
Perfect.
something and he's going to hop on. But it comes back to that like idea of the middle path and that balance, because like if you could strike that balance, then life actually it doesn't seem like this Gnostic sort of prison planet, and it also doesn't seem like this insanely ridiculous, overly progressive. Jesus, my cats are going insane. Overly progressive utopian hellhole. So it's like, I just don't understand. It's really hard for me to continue to watch people choose the extremes and act like there's no choice.
I think that's the whole problem of it. That's the whole issue is the middle path is for the individual anyway.
Yeah.
So it is, we're watching all these people go to the extremes, not realizing that these things really don't affect like our everyday lives, you know. They do, yeah, sure. If we switch to the brick system and rubies, everything over here will change. But how you take it is what makes that difference, right? And that's what that middle path is. I just don't ever see like the entirety of all the beings in the world all following the middle path at the same time for very
Yeah.
long.
No, they're
That'll,
never.
right.
I mean, it's nice during the periods where, like, I guess there are those who are following that middle path and they're able to have somewhat of a long, peaceful kind of life, which doesn't happen often. But I feel like it's kind of like what our parents maybe got. Like
Or
our
grandparents even.
and our grandparents, yeah, like right in between them and our parents, like that weird Gen Z, the Zoomers, right? Zoomers that people call them, the Gen Z ones. They're older than the millennials, right?
Yeah.
Dude, I can't keep up with all of that, bro.
I don't know what the hell, because I feel like
It's
that's
out
still
there, man. I think Gen Z are the youngsters or the kids of today.
because I feel like the baby boomers still had it pretty relaxed, and it's nice when you have that time of peace and relaxation and you're able to like have a family and create like a life for yourself. And I feel like it's very rare you get those like 60 to 70 year periods in history, and of course we didn't get shit. We just had one thing after the other, but we didn't have to get drafted into a war, which is nice, but it's just constant psychological warfare on us.
Dude, I was called up and I ran for my life because
Well, yeah, you're not in America, so
no, we had conscription in my days.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Much
I
worse.
didn't get a usual call up. I wasn't allowed to fill out the forms. I never enrolled, and I got called up to go straight to paratrooper base. My dad was like, "Run for your life, my boy. They're going to turn you into a hitman." And yeah, I was like the fittest bloke in my school, and I was like a national championship fighter and everything. So they obviously thought this guy needs to be a paratrooper, like one of those special forces, whatever guys.
My grandfather was a
like,
paratrooper.
"Run." I was like, "Yeah, okay, cool, Dad." Like, he did it to tell me twice. I don't fit into uniform so well, but so I had to run for my life. Was it like a year later they cancelled conscription? Thank God. Otherwise, I would have been in jail. But I like what you guys are talking about: the patterns, the cycles, the dynamic revolutions of the wheel. I do think that there's two sides to this whole story. I think these cycles are very much a part of nature's flow, and we can see it in the astrological system, right? We can see it the way these planetary effects work. We can see it the way these quantum gates keep opening and closing as we move through different shifts, and we see these shifts affecting ourselves personally, emotionally, spiritually, as well as being reflected in the world around us. Though I keep coming back to this point. It started for me doubting the system. I'm lucky. Doubting the system started for me when I was really young. I trashed my junior school when I was 10. So we trashed our junior school. Like it cost my mum a lot of money. Because it's like we went to vandalize. We wanted to shut the place down because we were like, this isn't right, man. What they're doing to us is not right. It's like they're messing with our minds. 3 of us got together and we went and kicked out the windows, took apart all the phones, moved all the books and everything around, got into all the classrooms, got the keys, took the papers and threw them all around the floor so that they had like all the students' paperwork. We did everything we could to shut them down, but it was like 3 days later and they were running and we were doing community service for like a year.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
But so that was for me like the point where I'd realized like there were men touching little children in our school. There was a man and I was the one who used to stand up to him. I used to say to little girls, don't sit in his lap. This is wrong. This is weird. This is dodgy. Like, this doesn't look right to me. Like, because I knew what sex was as a little kid. And I was the only one who stood up to the teachers. And like, I got like picked up by my throat and pinned to a like football post for telling the gym coach that he was our employee, that our parents paid.
Where'd you go to school again?
Hey?
Where'd you go to school again?
Cape Town. I went to Golden Grove.
So you were in South Africa.
That was a junior school. Then I went to Sachs in the high school. So I was like the one who would stand up for the other children and say, you can't be like this to the kids. You can't do this. Da, 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 da. And then I'd be the one who got victimized by the teachers. And but when I was 12, this is like 1989, I discovered Tataria in an encyclopedia. And I came back to school and I was like, you didn't tell us about Tataria. They were like, no, it's conspiracy theory. It doesn't exist. I was like, what do you mean it doesn't exist? It's got a set of encyclopedias at home from the 1800s, dude. Tataria existed. Like, they were like, no, it didn't. And I was like completely gobsmacked. I was like, wow. But this is like a set of encyclopedias. They don't make up stuff in encyclopedias. So I was like already like, okay, I can't trust history. So, you know, that was my first brush up at Tataria. I didn't know anything about Tataria other than I'd been looking in, for some reason I looked in this encyclopedia because I found it interesting because it was old. It was like I was almost not allowed to touch it. You know, it was like old bindings, this old set. It was my mom's boyfriend. He had inherited from his dad, who had inherited from his dad. It was like one of those, you know, it was his pride and joy. And it was worth a lot of money, obviously, because it was very old. And big old books, you know. They could smell like books. They had that book smell in them. I loved books. So for me, that was like where it twisted. So I as I've come about, like, and the information seems to have come into being more in the last 10, 15 years about the mud flood, about the changed history, right? I think that they've really done a number on us. I think they've messed with our history as well. I think what they've done is they've used the natural cycles because we can see them, and they've rewritten a false narrative of history based on the cycles so that it's believable. and they've twisted what was real history so that it fits the narrative to some degree, but it just doesn't. To me, it doesn't add up, and I wonder what your guys' thoughts are on this. I mean, just how long has this been going on? How old are these plans? It's obviously not something that they came up with in the last decades. We can see the history of it. It's going back to the 40s, right? World power and what they were doing, and the whole front for the Second World War. The Second World War wasn't what they told us. First World War wasn't what they told us. It seems like the further we go back in time, the more the BS flies. And there seems to be evidence of the so-called mummies of Egypt. I mean, did they actually come from the Americas? I don't even know. What do you guys think?
You want to go first, Franklin? I mean,
Sure.
Reagan. Sorry, I just called you Franklin, my bad. I meant Reagan.
No, I totally agree. That's what, when it comes to like studying history, I trust more so like the books that you're talking about that were handed down through your family, and historical records, family records. Like I said, I have a big family. They held on to a lot of family trees. Like we can actually date ourselves back to 16th century Ireland. But then even those kind of become skewed because of all the traveling, the different family members, the trade-offs with the information. So yeah, that information's a little subject to falsity. But no, I agree with you, Franklin, with I think they twisted it just right to line up with their esoteric knowledge of the cycles. And I think there's been added time and missing time. It's even blatant in our own history that they teach us, right? They tell you about the Dark Ages. And it's like, are you kidding me? You have documents and all this stuff from whatever century previous to whatever BC, but then you just missed 300 years of information. It was all burned, all of it. And then we just picked right back up. Like that just sounds like sloppy added time. They were just like, yeah, we need to fit in 300 years of history here. Well, let's just say that was the Dark Ages and no one knew how to write anymore. And, we'll just make it easy, right? That's easy to write in. You don't have to fabricate anything, make any books. All you have to do is say a couple horrific stories that they were brutalizing and maiming people. But the only thing is all that brutality that's talked about through the Dark Ages is the same brutality that existed before and after. Right? I mean, it was still, the world wasn't a brutal place before that. While you had Genghis Khan and Vikings and Saxons and all these people slaughtering people all over the place. What's the difference, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was sloppy.
Yeah, and I've said it before. I'm in total agreement with Steiner on this, where it's like you can go back 100 years at most, and you'll be lucky if you can get 100 years of accurate history. Yeah. Aside from that, everything else is might as well be considered pseudoscience. And he gives a lot of evidence as to why that would be true. He even gives it during his, I know there's a lecture where he's talking about Woodrow Wilson and something he was doing regarding, I guess, the splitting up of various regions in Europe. And basically he didn't like Woodrow Wilson at all. He was like, now the speech Woodrow Wilson just gave is extremely ignorant, basically, because he knows nothing about the areas that he's talking about. And then he goes through example by example as to why everything he said isn't true. And that's like the president of the United States at that point, which obviously everyone here, at least half this country was believing Woodrow Wilson, the half that voted for him. And the majority of the world don't think he's lying because he's the president of the United States. So, I mean, if it was evident to people even back in the 1900s, and he was even saying back in the early 1900s that this is really bad, like we don't have accurate stuff, we'll be lucky if I can go back 100 years and get accurate information. that gets us back to the 1800s. And then he's saying it's a wash before that. The only way you're getting accurate information is basically spiritual science, which is like you're going to the Akashic records via some sort of astral projection, or you're using some sort of common sense, intuitive thinking in combination with like the information you're able to gather.
Yep.
You see, like we see this happening in modern times. I got two examples. So I'm South African, and I was here during the time of Nelson Mandela, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Which
I
time? Was it the
remember-
time when he was in jail and died, or was it the time when he was the president after he got out of jail?
Both times.
Yeah, both.
I had a friend who was looking after him. And so my friend was a family friend. And like I was quite a lot younger than him, but like I had like loads of friends that were like in their 30s and their 40s, you know, when I was a kid. Even when I was like 18, 19, 17, I had like loads of older friends that I could have like proper conversations with. Because like I couldn't have deep conversations with my peers usually, because like they weren't really interested in it. Like
Yeah.
not so many. So I remember the story of when he had apparently passed away, and my mate was like, "No, that was propaganda." I was like, "What do you mean it was propaganda?" He was, "Dude, I was looking after him."
Wait, so a story did come out. This isn't
The
so
story
this
came out in South Africa that he had passed
wow.
away.
So that's news. That's I have not heard that anywhere. Have you,
Yeah.
Reagan? I didn't hear that this was actually a reported news story back when this happened.
Yes.
I thought this all
Yes.
developed after the fact.
No. This is I've tried to correct people when they talk about the Mandela Effect a lot of times. We were all told in South Africa that he had passed away. Then
What
my
the
friend said,
fuck?
"No, dude, that was the National Party trying to stop him from coming into power."
No, so
But
no
then
wonder
it
this
got
happened.
Leaked out that he didn't pass away, and then the whole country was like, "Okay, he didn't pass away," right? So, and my friend was like, I was looking after him at the time. He was growing carrots and potatoes for me in the prison. My friend was a prison warden
Wait. So
on Robben Island.
Reagan, you know this story too, or no?
Yes.
So you've heard that they actually did release
Yeah,
that he
'cause
died.
I talked to other people from South Africa.
Oh, okay.
I've worked with lots of
but
people from
isn't
South Africa.
the mainstream like Mandela Effect how it started narrative is like some woman at first that started this, and then a bunch of people seem to have accepted her narrative and said they remember the same thing, and it was that he had died. She wasn't from Africa. I don't think she was from, I feel like, the United States, and she had remembered him dying in jail. And then
There
a
was
bunch of other,
news-
but this was well
There was
after
news
the
that he died.
yeah, this was well after this was like right after maybe he won the presidency or something like that. And she was like, "Wait,
No, it
what?"
was before. It was before. he'd
But
won
I mean,
presidency.
the woman who had maybe kind of started she had, I think it was right after he won the presidency. She said, "What do you mean he won the presidency? He's supposed to be dead." And then a bunch of other people said, "Yeah, I remember him dying too." And then it became
Yeah.
a big thing. And then it
It
was
was a
just
news
like, no,
broadcast.
but there was news that came out in Africa. So no wonder that happened. That should have squashed the whole entire thing right there.
Yeah.
Well, this is it though. That was before the internet. It's not verifiable, and people's memories are very abstract.
Well, and
People
then
don't
but-
remember very
and
clearly.
and
Like-
that explains
like
that.
I'm-
But then there's like still 100 other things. I feel like it doesn't explain with the with certain
Like
things.
I'm a random dude. Like I can remember like, gosh, I can go back to like after I was out of the hospital. My timeline is like, I spent a lot of time training my memory, man. Like I spent like decades training my memory. So I might not be able to remember names and certain kinds of things. I have certain blockages with people, but when it comes to like where I was, what I did,
I'm
I
very
can still
good with that
remember
too.
floor plans of houses I lived in when I was like a
Same.
baby.
Same.
You know,
I'm very
and
good
where
with that too,
the
and I'm
stuff was
horrible.
and
I'm horrible with names, but very good with remembering things that happened to me.
yeah, spatial memory as well. I'm very good with.
Mhm.
Like if I've been somewhere, I can go back there again. I can remember like cities in India and like random places where I've just been. Like, dude, I can remember Chandigarh. Like, you should go to Chandigarh, dude. It's like the most confusing place you've ever been in your life. I rode around for hours getting lost in the city. The floor plan is just ridiculous. But anyway, my point is, like, it was a big discussion in South Africa because we had all heard that he was not alive, and then later on it turned out he was alive. Okay, so there's one point. Now, I've got another point, which is within the last 5-6 years. Is it 5 years? Yeah. Nicole Kidman's dad. When he passed away, there were 3 reports of how he died. 3.
Jeez.
One report was that he had been shot. Was it shot? I can't even remember all 3 reports. The other report was that he'd been pushed or he'd fallen off a building. And the other report was that he'd had a heart attack. Now, if you go and Google it, they've narrowed it down to 2. Now, the backstory to this guy, this is interesting. He had, you go and look at his death, they won't mention the fact that charges were being brought up against him for being part of a kiddie fiddling ring, right? And that one of the women he had done some fiddling with when she was a youngster was actually turning evidence against him, and there was a warrant being processed for his arrest. And just before the warrant got processed for his arrest, he quickly ran away to escape to get to, where was it? It was Singapore. Yes, it was Singapore. And then he got to Singapore and he was in hiding. And then suddenly there were these 3 different reports of how he passed away. Now, this will one day, we just got to wait for it. This is going to be a Mandela Effect.
Yeah.
This is how these people roll, man. They want us to twist our perspective of reality to the point where we don't know what's real anymore, so that if they change history, we just go, oh, it's a Mandela Effect.
There was something recently that came up, something so stupid that really bothered me. Not really bothered me, but it bothered me enough to be like, nah, someone fucked with something here, because my memory is quite good. And even though I didn't see that movie, I didn't even see the full movie, I know for a fact this motherfucker was wearing glasses in the scene, and it was like a Tom Cruise movie, the one where he slides out with the shirt and he's singing, and he has his collar. It's like I think he's sleeping with his teacher or something in it. It's like but now he's not wearing the Ray-Bans. And I'm like,
all right, so for all of those things, like especially,
but all of that stuff can be changed now.
That's what I mean. Like, okay, so like
in different editions.
What are the common ones you hear when it comes to Mandela effects, right?
And I hate the movie ones. The movie ones suck because they can all be changed. Yeah.
Well, and same with the books. You're telling me you can't publish 2 books with different titles.
So here's the weird thing. If you go back and watch old videos of them watching it, they've somehow it's somehow changed, even when like Tom Cruise is on an old talk show when he's younger talking about it. But I mean, I guess the glasses wouldn't really come up. So like, sure, you could change it. No one's going to mention it anyways, I guess.
But imagine, I mean, you're an actor, right?
Yeah,
how many times do you shoot? They do a shoot with the glasses. They say, take
you
the
might be right.
off.
There you go. So they probably even had it.
You're an actor. You're not going to remember that one scene.
Yeah, yeah.
But they make it memorable without the glasses.
Yeah.
Like
so
you did 47 takes.
And they say, we're scrapping that. Let's do it with the glasses. And they do it with the glasses. This is really good. Then they make something happen on set that makes you remember that.
And
Naked woman runs on set. You're not wearing glasses. She comes and grabs you and kisses your eyes.
And perfect example of
who let
how...
her on? You know, she was a hottie. You're never going to forget that.
Yeah.
Because you're doing your thing. Like, okay, I definitely am not wearing glasses because I got kissed in the eye by a naked woman, you know? So I'm just as an example, like it's so easy for them to do that. And they probably had this in mind.
Yeah. And perfect example of how easy even it is and how much they could change Star Wars. I mean... He went in and changed stuff that people didn't even want changed, and like he told them he was changing it because he thought it looked better. What's his name? George Lucas. Yeah, he was like, I want all these 3D horrible looking things added to the first few Star Wars. people hated it, he still did it anyways. So I mean, it almost was like he was tipping his hat.
Cut, you know, like I have the original cut of the first Star Wars, right? That doesn't have all that garbage in it. It's like it's almost like Dune, right?
I think the only one of these that really bothered me ever was the when people said they had tapes of Wizard of Oz, and that scene where they're walking through the woods and all of a sudden they have like play guns, a net, and like something else. I don't even know. It's like 3 ridiculous items that I watched that movie so many times when I was a kid. I have no recollection of ever seeing any of that. And I've heard people say they saw it change, like they had it normal, it wasn't there, then they like rewinded it and it was there. Which, I mean, who knows? They could be bullshit.
It could be even so complex, like it's well beyond the realm of what your average person understands. So like within the VHS tapes, I mean, those things could have been winding. So when they hit a certain frequency, you'll see things in the images once, but when you watch it again, it won't hit that resonant frequency again, right? Yeah.
And that's where it gets like, what the hell kind of technology do these people have? if that's the case. I mean, but I think I think almost all the movie stuff you have to throw out to even consider this thing.
The thing is, though, I don't know if you guys have followed Darren Brown's work. So Darren Brown is like a mentalist. So he's an NLP master.
Yeah. I followed him. I've seen his stuff. It's great.
He got a guy to apparently believe, and it seemed pretty real if you watch it, that this guy was in a zombie movie running around with a shotgun by hypnotizing this guy.
Oh, yeah.
So he was like saying basically you'll be shocked. So if you get an advert that comes before that film and that there are hidden images, flashing images, you could be in a cinema, you could be watching something. There could be other forms of advertising. They could be advertising the film to you, and you could be getting it planted into your brain that's going to happen. And when we look at reality, this is like what the neuroscientists seem to have come up with, is that most of what we're experiencing is a memory. And it's a projected memory, an expected memory. So you look at reality, you don't see everything in front of you. You just see the important bits, and your unconscious just fills in the gaps with what it should look like.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Sort of like rendering a scene, but like trying to save some bandwidth so that you're not getting caught up like on each leaf. And so with that way that the brain works, it's not hard to NLP to put program triggers in people's brains that they will see things that they think they're seeing and they're not seeing it. And it could all be part of this plan to make us doubt reality so that it gets easier for them to change history. Because once they start getting you to doubt your history now, we are doubting the history from our own lifespans. So imagine how easy it's going to make it for us to believe history from the generation before. And so now the younger generation is just growing up thinking that like it's just the Mandela Effect is just normal. So yeah, I know that I remember seeing that happen, but it's Mandela Effect, dude. History is different. And if you can convince somebody that their memories are not relevant, that's like some serious powerful magic.
Oh yeah, that's the worst thing anyone could ever accept, because your memory is who you are, and that's literally going to be how they get these people to accept transhumanism, thinking they don't need their fucking memories and they can upload themselves to a computer and clone their consciousness, and that's still them, or it's not. You're gone. You're dead, kid. Your memories, that's all you got. You can't transfer them.
You've sold the rights to your consciousness to a corporation that wants to create an AI system in your honor. And you now become a glorified AI system. That's a very interesting concept. You know, you speak about the transhumanism and that whole, I think like they're setting us up for AI because there will be AI. But the AI that there will be used to be humans.
Yeah.
And I think
can
like,
see that.
Yeah, man. I think this is the goal. Like, we have to ask ourselves, okay, so it seems so obvious that there's a controlled demolition happening, right? Like, the word woman is going to be spelled with an X. There's no way I'm ever going to allow my son to spell
Wait,
the
this
word
is
woman with an
real?
X.
This is something real?
Dude, I've checked in with teachers in the Europe.
I'm going to spell it with every other letter
I've
except
checked
X.
in. There's a friend of mine that's a teacher in Europe, and she's confirmed to me that she is now teaching children to spell the word woman with an X.
See,
I
these
was
are the
like,
people who
she's in
need to
Germany,
go.
dude.
They need to go.
Where
This
does
is
the X
really
go?
happening.
Where's the X go?
It should go in the
the
eyes
A.
of the teachers.
The A.
Two X's
They
across their
don't
eyes.
want us to know that the word womb, man, is a man with a womb.
Yeah, I see.
They want to
Okay.
separate into two races.
Mhm.
It's
Oh
part of
yeah.
this scrambled egg phenomenon of brainlessness that we're experiencing. And then, of course, like, namaste, Ein Sof. I hope you're good. I hope everybody's having a good day, man. Big love to you. And I think like this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? So they want to mess with our history. They want to mess with our idea of who we are in terms of masculine or feminine, right? They take a real phenomenon. I actually know a girl. She is a girl. A woman, her daughter was born with both genitalia, and she had to elect whether that child would be a male or a female. And it was a really difficult decision because it's a very rare thing that happens that both genitalia are loaded guns.
These are hermaphrodites, right?
Yeah, and it does happen.
Intersex, yeah.
It's a thing in nature, but it's very rare. And then you have a lot of children that are born with a second vestigial parts of sexual stuff, and they're not really any good. So it's no decision. Like, it's a she with a little bit of a ding dong, or it's a he with a little bit of a, like, come on, I got a bit of a gash, but basically it's very rare that they're like split down the middle, where the doctors say to the parents, look, literally, she can have a child or he can be a father, and they have to choose like what to go with, because it's like, apparently it's not cool to have both bits. I'm like, damn, that'd be pretty interesting. Like, I'm not bi, I'm not gay, but I like both ends. That would be like a legitimate reason to be swinging on both poles, so to speak. But so they take a real phenomenon, and now they want us to believe that this is the norm. The same with the history, it seems to me that we're being driven further into a little box, which is becoming more and more ridiculous. Like, when I was in school, we were taught, and I remember explicitly, that 70% of all of the oxygen was manufactured in the sea by plankton.
Yeah.
I saw
or at least
David
65.
Attenborough talking the other day. Sorry?
At least 65. I can't remember if it was 70 or 65, but
It's
I'm
up
with
there.
you. It's up there.
I was a little bit before. Like, in my day, it was 70.
Yeah, maybe
it
it's
was
60.
65.
Yeah, I
Then
still
it was
remember it being
60.
very
What-
high.
Yeah, what's the percentage now? What percentage
Let's see.
of oxygen
It's down to 50 probably.
manufactured
Maybe it's down to 30.
by ocean? And I bet you it's going to be like 50 something. Because I saw David Attenborough the other day, and 50%, dude.
Yep, called it.
Like, they are not terraforming the Earth.
Oh, they're
Well, is it
terraforming.
them that's terraforming the Earth? Look, when you do away with the whales, you see the whales are the cleanup system for the carnivorous plankton, which feeds on the phytoplankton. Now, when you don't have the whales, the carnivorous plankton get a bigger population, and the phytoplankton have a smaller population. And the phytoplankton is most of the oxygen generation in the ocean. And so the fact that all of the whale species are like now becoming almost extinct or really endangered means that these whales cover a lot of ground, and they go up and down cleaning the ocean. And one whale, can you imagine one whale's impact on the carnivorous plankton's population? Like that big body. I mean, how much carnivorous plankton does one whale need to eat? And now imagine like there's thousands of whales. Like, just how many whales? Why is whaling allowed? I think whaling is allowed because they want to change this. So who would want to change the air? I mean, if you're a species that doesn't need so much oxygen,
The Greys.
it's just, to me, it doesn't add up.
And to me,
like, there's just too many things.
to me, by
that
the
are-
Greys, I mean the fucking families that have been running shit forever and seem to have advanced technology and might have some sort of life extension technology and are probably all falling the hell apart from all the shit they do to themselves. But who knows?
I'm thinking that underground there's more CO2 than oxygen.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So if you're a
Yeah.
sub
yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
race and you want to emerge and take charge, then
Yeah.
But then why would they be saying get rid of CO2 here?
no, they don't want to get rid of CO2. They
That-
just
when
want
they're
to-
that CO2 here equation is people. Remember?
they want to block the sunlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why do they want to block the sunlight? Like, when we start really looking at what's going on, because this is a big thing. To this day, people are discussing whether geoengineering happens or not. I can't understand. Like, you just
No,
go
that's
to the-
insane.
Yeah. It's like it's official, dude. It's like there's money changing hands. It's like you can track the bank accounts. Like, it's not even a joke. It's admitted. It's acknowledged. It's discussed in United Nations. You know, they're having progress reports, and this is what's happening. So this conjecture that we've got, which is this conjecture society, I think, has really been put into a really heavy dynamic because there's so much disinformation and there's so much counterintelligence out there, and it's to the point where, you know, this armed prick adventure we all just went on. Look what they did. Look what they got away with.
It's unbelievable. I still can't believe it.
What, the
No
last
one-
5 years?
Yeah, no one cares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like what percentage of the population is affected for ability to have babies? Have we actually seen the numbers? We haven't.
No.
It's falling rapidly,
Yeah. And another
and
couple
we're
of these
all
little
going to be
adventures
affected. And all of us, who, even if we didn't get it, we're all going to be affected. We can't.
Well,
I
the
don't
whole
think-
place is getting terraformed regardless. So
That's
you
what
already
that's what I
have-
mean. So it's kind of
yeah.
like we're all friggin' dealing with it. Now, I mean, we could look at it in a way as like, maybe who knows how powerful our bodies are. Maybe we're going to like evolve through it and actually become stronger for it, and they might have really just messed up. But I don't know if that's the case.
I think it's one of the greatest fears coming out of all the stuff that has come through major media through the last 20, 30 years. I mean, you can go back to like Brave New World and Fahrenheit 451 and all these other, like, you know, futuristic dystopias. But watching all the concurrent ones that have come out in the last 20 some years, I mean, even the TV shows and everything, right? I mean, like your Stargates and Eurekas, Star Treks, all this stuff, right? And it's like, in a movie, you have to understand it's 24 to 36 pictures per second. You have a picture tells you 1,000 words. So how much information is held within a movie, right? How many stories and different aspects and acts of theater and all the different stuff is concurring all at once. And so, like, from what I draw from all that stuff, there's all these, you know, pitfalls. And so, like you just said, Chris, like, I could name at least like your Pitch Black series, even the comic books and everything. That's what that talks about. That's what he is.
Yeah.
He is this escape artist that survives everything no matter what, and actually becomes like basically Frankenstein's monster against any.
I mean, the
Works.
really basic story, the main story that everyone knows is X-Men.
Yeah, X-Men.
You get all these people who are experimented on, and then some of them wind up becoming superheroes that wind up having to then kill the people who experimented on them. When in reality, I think if it's probably going to be more like, if they do actually succeed, those people are going to be weapons that those people then use against the rest of us.
Well, that's what all the psychological programming is for.
Yeah.
And the mass psychology of it all is how you pull it all off in the first place. You have all the mixed match information, you have everyone doubting their own memories, you have all this fractalization. And I mean, yeah, the controlled demolition, that's what this is. It's a planned out, thought out, entrapment of the minds of men. And how do you bring a society down? Like, I don't think people understand that wars were never won by sending 120,000 troops into some enemy territory and conquering the place. Like, that was hardly, that was a battle. A battle was won there. The actual war is won in the psychology and the philosophy and the persuasion, and it was actually conquering a village strategically, actually capitalizing, not firing a single bullet. Like, that's how places were conquered.
Yeah.
It was all
Yeah.
deception and internal destruction and notes here and there, right? Making love affairs that actually weren't there so they'd kill each other off. Like, that was the real war.
Well, even just the threat of Rome is a great example.
Yeah.
At least the story of Rome, whether or not how much it's true, who knows? But the story of Rome, where a lot of times they just had to roll into a place and be like, listen, join Rome and you're good. You can keep doing whatever the hell you've been doing and we won't bother you. Just like once in a while, send us some cash and fight with us give us a couple of your soldiers, fight with us if we need it, and then we'll leave you alone.
Yep.
Jesus. If you guys hear my cat and she starts bothering you, let me know.
She's good.
She's been being weird.
I think that's a really good point. Silas has hopefully just arrived.
There he
Hey,
is.
brother Silas, how are you doing?
Hello.
Hope you're
Yeah,
good.
Morning.
I'm very well. How are all of you?
He says he told me his voice wasn't good on he was losing his voice. His voice still sounds stronger than mine ever will.
Oh,
You're
brilliant.
You're a
There you
real
go.
son of a bitch, Silas, with that that beautiful speaking voice you have.
Liquid gold rolling off the lips there.
But if anyone knows about this topic, Silas, he's the king of this, the controlled demolition, the managerial controlled demolition.
Of the West.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
it's-
Yeah.
Welcome, dear brother. Those of you that don't know Silas, check out his channel, Silas Speaks, at Silas Speaks. He's got a lot of good content out there, like-minded content to this conversation and more, and a lot of looking at the historical side of things. It's an honor to have you, brother, and throw some cards on the table. Let's jam it up.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. From what I could hear, I would it's of my opinion that everything that we're seeing, it's all fairly cyclical in terms of the way that, I guess, a hidden empire has constructed all of these other various empires, and in the primary end game, the objective appears to be to basically establish God in algorithmic form. And that appears to be the final end goal of all civilizations, because civilization is merely a vessel. It's a way for power to centralize all power unto itself into perpetuity. And of course, the only way to centralize all power in the material world is for the material world to feel like it's conquered the spiritual. So the only way they believe they can conquer the spiritual is by conquering the organ that sort of conjoins the body to the spirit. And of course, that's the mind. One way to do that, of course, within BioDigital, it's through BioDigital Convergence, rather. So it's using technology, getting everyone onto the grid, controlling information. And really, this is wrapped up in the Aquarian Age, the new age that's coming about. The water bearer, the information is akin to water. It's akin to the currents of water. So the water bearer is he who controls information, by controlling the currents of information. And of course, in digital, in our new digital paradigm, all information is controlled, though it's provided the veneer that that there is some, well, of course, ourselves, there are some voices of discontent amongst the rather streamlined current of this new Aquarian age. But yeah, that's what I think. I also tend to see, you see it with Rome as well. There's this, basically all empires have gradually urbanized. They've gradually got to this point where everything is sort of square. For example, everything is built on grid lines. Humanity is ever more domesticated after each iteration of be it an empire or a civilization or as Spengler stated, a high culture. So that's the way I view it. I mean, ultimately, we could. The question is begged. What is the purpose? What's the purpose for, I guess, perfecting the soul trap?
Exactly, because they have to be getting something out of it. Because you don't just keep doing the same shit over and over again and destroying everything you've put in place just for a little bit more control. There's something that they have access to. What is it? Is it a place? Is it a technology?
Well,
is it information? I mean, we know they have information, but is it information that makes them immune to actually caring what the hell happens to pretty much anything here, as long as this place still exists in some form? Or is it something in the metaphysical they're dealing with? Or do they not ever want to leave here?
Well, it makes one wonder why civilization as a pattern has been reiterated all the way through, through time, through recorded history at least. I mean, we could even speculate it stems from pre-recorded history, and it was the same there as well. I mean, everything in this world, it is basically it's a grand stage play. And even the Hindus mentioned it as well with the concept of the Leela, the cosmic dance. And you see throughout every single civilization, every period of history, it's like what Mark Twain stated: history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. And by that, what I think he meant, and what I would mean by that, is there is nothing new under the sun. It's almost like something is projecting onto this vivarium of Earth a sort of stage performance, a written play. Of course, each iteration of the play may each act, they may change the names, they may develop the characters ever so slightly, but ultimately the way that the narrative is exposed to the audience is typically done in a similar fashion. That tells you that perhaps Earth, as we know it, is it's somewhat itself a stage play. There is an intelligence to it. We know this as well. I mean, you can pick up on the fabric of reality through mathematics, through geometry. The consciousness of man can also pick up on that too. So whatever is at play here, it appears to be gaining some form of sustenance off us.
That's what I was just going to say, because it's definitely not learning enough to make it worth it. It's not learning enough to make the correct the right corrections to the subsequent, not subsequent, that would be prior, right? The iteration that comes next does not have any better programming than the previous one, is what I'm trying to say. If we're seeing the rhyming patterns that continue, and ultimately it keeps ending in destruction, the changes being made to the program or the iteration, they're not working. So then that's not the point of the program itself, or the iteration, the simulation, the stage play. There's another point, and it has to be energy, the harvesting of some sort of energy.
If you look at this world, and this may be a fairly loaded term, but it's vampiric in a sense.
Yeah.
Everything, there's a chain reaction of everything gaining sustenance of everything else. Pardon me. So
It's like it's like necromancy. It's an obsession with death. There's like a weird necromantic aspect to everything.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, as well, I mean, even AI. See, I have this, it's more along the lines of a Gnostic point of view on the creator and the God.
United.
Yeah, so I think if they believe that they can recreate the creator through, or what they would term as God, what most religions term as God, if they can recreate that through algorithm, then the first AI itself would have been the intelligence behind this,
The
I guess,
demiurge,
vivarium,
basically.
the demiurge, yeah. So if it's to gain sustenance, what they would have to do is to perfect the soul trap, to perfect the exchange or the extraction and conversion of this. I think Robert Monroe called it loosh. I tend to just call it like energetic momentum. It's the thing that keeps everything turning. It keeps the wheel turning. And the reason this place appears as such is because, well, firstly, is the Buddhists knew it as, it's a place of suffering, right? It's a place that it seems to be created to engender suffering, but more so as well, it appears to be a place that, it perpetuates itself upon that suffering and decay. And even the alchemists knew this through putrefaction. So the first stage of the magnum opus, the great work, how everything came to be, is through that putra and factio, which is putra, decay, factio, to make. So thus, ordo ab chaos, right? Order out of chaos. This is what they're manipulating. This is what they're utilizing to control people. So, yeah, even in this world, they try and maintain us in this myopic, narrow focus, because they do not want us to sort of awaken, to transcend the amnesic state of which we're in. I tend to see a lot of what we see within the world as it almost appears through this suffering as the Buddhist state, there are specks of beauty, and those specks of beauty occur within, I guess, the fallen star of man. And it appears as though what we're seeing here is almost like a facsimile of perhaps, where we actually derive from, spiritually speaking. And of course, you find this throughout all of the esoteric. You can look in the Greco-Roman mythologies, the Elysian fields. You can look into even Buddhism. They talk about the Buddha realm. I forget the Sanskrit name for it now. The Hindus have a similar idea too. Again, it's breaking free from that wheel of samsara, that notion. But yeah, ultimately, you posted the star there, the star tarot card. That's exactly, yeah, that's exactly what we're discussing. And obviously the eight rayed star is the various major phases of the moon. And of course, according to the Buddha or the Buddhist tradition and other esoteric traditions, the moon is the place in which we arrive at the world. Of course, the reason for that is because it's tied to the feminine. So again, if you look into Martin Fleischmann, his work with the toroidal moment, the toroidal moment looks almost like a vertical spiral. If you were to view it, on a sort of deeper dimensional level. And what that appears to do is it creates a yin-yang shape. This is where the yin-yang symbol comes from. And it's, I'm going to paraphrase because it's some technical jargon that he uses, but essentially it takes an atom from the upper and it transcends it, or transmutes it to the lower. So you have this sort of cascadance, this descent, which you also see on the Sephiroth of energy. And through that, you see sort of similarities to the fallopian tube, to the birth canal, which also appears to have this same sort of tuba, or from the Latin, a horn or a conical shape, right? This same yin-yang shape, this same toroid vertical spiral. And then you see the same thing on the Saturn square. Which potentially, one of the translations is this Satyr, where we get our term Saturn from, the cedar, from beginning repeatedly to end, ad infinitum, works with toroidal vortexes, or works with whirlwinds, or works with storms, or it's all of these same sorts of symbols that we also see apparent within nature. It's like in any simulation, any video game, you'll always find little glitches through the fabric of the video game, right? I'm not saying it's necessarily a simulation, but it appears to be a facsimile of something that is of the upper, of the far more elevated or transcendent realm. We see little glitches, little patterns in the fabric of everything, which sort of clues us in. Those who, close our physical eyes to open our third eye, I guess, from the sort of a Buddhist point of view, or even a Vedic point of view, we begin to see these patterns, and it begins to sort of awaken us ever so gradually from that amnesia, that ignorance.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, brother, and I think it's really, really on point. It's really poignant. I think they've hijacked everything. From my experience in my work, I first came across this maybe in the 90s, but I only saw it outside of myself happening to other people a little while after, in the early thousands, like 2002, 2003. Even these beings that people are tripping out on, these holy guardian angels, these Buddhic manifestations, these avatars, these ascended masters, I've noticed and I've experienced that there is psychotronic technology that can be used, and I've noticed a couple of races to use this that can affect our consciousness and our experience in the dream state of what we experience. My son's mom constantly believed she was communicating with angels, and one night I heard my little boy telepathically. So I left my body, traveled to the other side of the house, and there was this creature on her back. And I had to remove this creature and send him into outer space, find another race. And next morning, my little boy was telling her about how daddy had come and removed this creature from her. And she was like, it was just a dream. And I was like, no, dude. Listen when your little boy speaks. He was about 6 at the time. 5, 6, and he could still see the spirits and the beings very clearly. He was like he named them. He was mapping them. And so anyway, my point is this is such a big thing. And she believed that she was speaking to angels. And I was like, dude, seriously, you need to wake up call. And I think they've hijacked Buddhism, because when I lived in Sri Lanka, I was very connected to the Theravadins. And I've noticed different versions of Buddha's teachings, and what has been popularized for us is the northern canon of Tibet. Let's just look at this. Within Tibet, the northern canon of Tibet is the minority, right? That's just within Tibet, it's a minority. Within Asia, it's a minority of a minority within a minority. So we're basically talking about a minority that's much smaller in size in relation. If you imagine Christianity and you give the mic to the Jehovah's Witnesses and let them speak for everybody, because that's what Christianity is, right? Jehovah's Witnesses, which actually is rejected by most Christians. Like they believe that they're like really out there and they're crazy and they're not talking the truth. So like even when we look at like what's been taught to us under the guise of Buddhism, there's a lot of terms that don't really add up. And I've always had this issue with it. Blavatsky wasn't allowed to look at these old books. So what she did was she channeled through automatic writing, she channeled one of the ancient texts. And that text is, to this day, the best translation that exists. And I don't know whether that's by accident or by design, right? I mean, she obviously channeled it in her native language. But my point is, like, it makes us wonder, like, do you know how easy it would be to completely derail an entire form of philosophy? You just need to change a few words and change a couple of key foundational beliefs, just a little. You can translate it, mistranslate it, or deliberately to make the nuance a little bit different. And so now people are speaking about like non-existence, right? Like what is non-existence? And a lot of these ideas come into our popular medium of belief and ideology. And the reason I point this out is because I did date a couple of psychologists. One from Australia that was like pretty high up. She was doing a doctorate, and the other one was a PhD, and she was a high up in the NHS, a research coordinator in the UK, but very high up. She was actually one of the highest psychologists in Scotland, funnily enough, Silas. So she developed this form of therapy with horses. It's quite famous in the UK. It was her thesis. Anyway, she's got a horse. She loves horses. But my point is, like, what seemed to come through to me there was that there's this huge push towards using these Buddhist mindfulness practices and adapting a lot of the psychology towards this alignment. And to me, that's a warning. That's a red bell being rung, right? The moment the established sciences are starting to look at something and take it seriously, I'm going, hold on. They don't want us to know the truth. They don't want us to have a functional system. They don't want us to be healthy, because healthy people are not good consumers. Healthy people don't do what they're told. Healthy people think for themselves. Healthy people want to be free. Healthy people don't live in fear and get controlled by propaganda, because they don't need to. So it stands to reason that what's being sold to us in the form of psychology is a little bit twisted. And I think, like, we can pretty much agree that all the sciences are twisted, right? They had to remove aether because they couldn't sell the crap to us with aether, right? So they had to remove it, and now they've realized, well, it does exist.
Well,
So
the ether is the entire basis of all. It seems like all science is, you need the ether for all physics to actually work the most, to get the most out of it. You need the ether.
They replaced it with a vacuum.
They've replaced it with hundreds of things. They even called it quantum foam at one point. What was it? Dark energy, black matter. Jesus Christ, dark plasma. There's so many different things they've called the ether.
So I think that, like, what you're saying is quite on point, and like a lot of these establishments, sciences seem to be so upside down and so twisted and so back to front. I couldn't swallow what they were teaching me for physics when I was a kid. I was like, what about the other universes? And they were like, what are you talking about? And to me, it made perfect sense. Like, we're living in a multiverse. But that wasn't like fly in the early 90s, like 1990, 91. You weren't supposed to be talking about the multiverse.
Well, they're pushing multiverse now, Steve. You could argue that they want you to believe in multiverse now.
Well, I think they do. But I think that there's a reason why they do want us to believe in it. Because now they've set up the narrative for it. Right? The Mandela Effect.
Well, also augmented reality will allow you to like wear your
Yeah.
goggles and go to any multiverse you choose. That's in your bedroom through the VR headset.
It's a license to change history. You're experiencing.
Yeah.
You were in a parallel universe. You're now in this universe. Deal with it. That's just, the law changed. Yeah, well, you came into this universe. The law's like that over here. But we used to have rights. Yeah, well, that was the other universe. This universe, you don't have any rights. But, just get back into your AI-driven car. Go back to your AI quadrant where you're allowed, and your access to Bitcoin will be turned on.
You know, it's weird. I was watching something today with he was a presidential advisor, and apparently, I guess he was involved in a bunch of different physics programs. One at Harvard, one at Oxford, and then he did a little work, I think, at MIT. His name's similar to Milgram, but it's like I think it's Milgren, Melgren. I'm not 100% positive. But he died. He died recently, but he was on his last podcast with this podcaster is super shady and I don't trust at all. He was talking about basically his whole career. And it's interesting because as soon as he gets to college, like you got the super young kid, obviously he gets in actually I think early into college, and like Harvard is actually like, if you don't go to Oxford and you stay here with us and do your doctorate and stuff here, you don't even have to go to class. We'll just let you write a book. All we want you to do is write a book, and maybe we'll publish it. Like, so that right there is telling you that these colleges, a lot of these colleges, at least the Ivy League ones, the really important technical ones, they're not colleges, they're recruitment centers for scientists that are going to be recruited into whatever sketchy ass programs that are going to maintain the status quo. So I thought that was really weird and really interesting. But oh God, he said one other thing that was the real reason I brought him up, and now I totally forgot because I was rambling on about the other part of the story. What was the last thing you just said, Franklin?
The last thing I said was, well, I was talking about the sciences, how twisted it was, and then I was talking about Buddhism, how the idea of the Buddhists can be, the cosmology can be twisted, and then I was talking about
I found it.
The ascended masters.
I just remembered it. For some reason, I think it was when we were talking about the headset stuff, and you can go to any multiverse you want. One thing he said that I thought was super weird and interesting was that one of the favorite books of all of these physicists he was around was Three Body Problem. Now, I know that show just came out, and I know a little bit about the show, and I was like, what? And that's their favorite book? But if you think about what's involved, all the things involved in that story, I mean, you have the AI, you have this alien weird threat that never shows up, at least I've never read the book. I've only seen parts of the show. Has anyone read the book? Has anyone seen the whole show?
No.
I haven't seen all of it.
Yeah, so, but he expressed his belief in these extraterrestrial entities too, or interdimensional entities, whatever he thought they were. And that how he really seemed to believe that they wanted the best of the best minds in physics. Like they were like really coming for them. And that's another weird thing. It's like, I think some of these people are brainwashed into believing that they're special little boys, like when they're younger, and then they go on to become teachers at the universities that then brainwash the rest of the population. And we never get any sort of actual work done that does anything good for the majority of us.
I think that's a good point, and especially it's got to do with these accolades, PhD and doctorate, and the three-body problem. Gosh, I mean, we're talking about dream time here as well. We're talking about shamanism. We're talking about Atzilut, Brian, Yetzirah as it folds in to make the Ishia, the Malkut that we know of, physical reality. Talking about the etheric plane, the astral plane, as they are this polarized expression of the the causal field, the causal body, causal reality. We find this, obviously the divine, the middle, and the underworld. And we find this if we look at Yggdrasil of the old, Norse tradition, the three realms within the tree. It's universal when we look at reality that there is a three-body problem. We are existing here in this physical body, which is this fourth body, but this fourth body is a conglomeration of three bodies. And this is like universal. Doesn't matter what sphere of occult practice you study. Even if you're just going to do yoga, you're going to learn about the Ida, the Pingala, and the Sushumna. And how the Sushumna separates to make the Ida and the Pingala, and how the Ida and Pingala can only exist because they are polarities of the Sushumna. But all of these together make up the physical body. You see, wherever we go, we've got this dynamic. And I think that they've sort of, once again, like you were saying earlier, Regan, about how they take these occult notions and occult concepts and they turn them into a show for us. Yeah? They turn them into like something that we can observe. And because there is a three-body problem. But I don't think it's the three-body problem that they've sold us. The three-body problem is that reality is form, reality is quality, and then reality is the fundamental structure that produces the quality and form paradigm. And that these three states of being, seen as like, the Trinity, seen as the triple goddess, like whichever school of thinking you go, you're going to end up at the same place. Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, whichever idea you want, even, God the Father, Mary and the Christos, if that works for you. And then, of course, this name, Christ. Like, I always find that funny. Like, I've taught my little boy to correct his mom. Like, there was never anybody called Christ on earth, Mom. His name was Emmanuel. That word came later. So let's call him by his name if you're going to talk about him. But I think, like, they've taken everything and given it a facelift. And they want to sort of give us the facade of a facade. And this reality is this notion of reality being a construct, being a fabricated simulacrum of true reality, and that we're living within this simulacrum of true reality, which we would call dream time from a shamanic perspective. And that this dream time, when you look deep into it, it's an expression of three fields of dream time that manifest this dream time, and that we can interact with this dream time through the central world of dream time. And through the central world of dream time, we're able to actually bring through information that can be used to program dream time, which is quite an interesting concept. The nature of reality is, I think, time. The three-body problem, the future, the past, and the present. Does the future and the past really exist? From a shamanic perspective, the future and the past are actually happening now as a concept. Like, we are in this field, and depending on how we orient ourselves, the future and the past move with us like an axis. So if you shift your axis, you can shift. So they take this real phenomenon and they bring it to us and call it the Mandela Effect. But this is something that is really only experienced by trained initiates and shaman. It's not really something that Dick, Tom, and Harry actually has access to on a normal level, unless they're having some kind of a transcendent experience. But they take something which is real, and then they package it and they sell it to us because it's believable. And I think this is like really what this three-body problem is. I hope I've been able to elucidate what I mean and been articulate enough. What do you guys think?
I was going to mention regarding the idea of dream time, and even the way they sort of, in the Vedic traditions and other traditions as well, where they describe the absolute reality, or the way that they describe, the higher realms, be it the Buddha realm or whatever it may be, the Elysian fields or what have you. It appears as though they are, for example, when one is in a dream, this is just anecdotal from my own personal perspective. When I started to attempt to lucid dream, and again, for me, it was a very gradual process, because I'm a very rationalistic person, so I guess you could say I become easily lost within dreams, and it took me a while to sort of awaken to how to lucid dream, or at least having lucid dreams intentionally. And I noticed when one is in a lucid dream, and the lucidity itself can be spurred on by simply consciously within the dream finding patterns that do not make sense. There's a part of me that believes that probably links to the three-body problem as well in some way. But I think one way that people can sort of awaken to the illusory state of this world is by lucid dreaming as well, is by exploring the dream, is by exploring or doing dream work, I guess you could call it. And I've found quite a lot of benefit from that.
This was what Steiner said. This is what Steiner said everyone should do, was dream work. That was his biggest. Meditate right before sleep. He gave you all the meditations, and then eventually your sleep would become closer. I mean, I guess more in alignment with the spiritual realm, because sleep was the closest thing you could do while you're alive that would get you. I guess it's the closest thing to death that you could do while you're alive, to dying that you could do while you're alive without actually dying. Because when you sleep, you go into a different place. But I mean, I used to lucid dream all the time when I was a kid. And to me, I didn't think it was anything that everyone else couldn't do. I didn't know. Would wake myself up by closing my eyes when I wanted to. But I can't do it anymore. Not like I used to.
I think as well. I had that as.
What?
Never say can't. So,
I mean, I once in a while have one, but it's not the same, is what I mean. I'm sure I could if I worked on it, but it doesn't just come to where I go to sleep and I'm like, in my dream, I become aware I'm dreaming. And then I'm like, well, do I want to stay in this dream? How long can I hold myself in this dream before I wake up? Or do I want to wake myself up because something bad's about to happen?
Well, I think it's just something you haven't practiced, so you also lost it. Whereas a kid, you had that connection. And then through all the institutionalization and all the other nonsense growing up, probably beat you out of it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it stopped in college when I got the that weird H. pylori stomach thing, and was having in a lot of pain from that, and just dealing with stress from that, and I kind of stopped dreaming for a while.
The suffering almost appears to be like an anchor. That's why I think the thing you have to cultivate is fulfillment in your life. And I think that's the way that they've set up this system is to try and diminish that joy from fulfillment within our lives. And I think if you can break through that veil, as the Doors said, break on through to the other side, I think you can escape the hamster wheel, so to say. I think you can tap into something that's that is within one's self, but lies dormant, lies in a dormant, slumberous state. I think this also probably links to the symbolism of Orion and things like that. Orion being a symbol of mankind, this universal symbol that, again, he's headless, he's in slumber. He has to go upon the Eridanus, the world of information of currents that fling him this way and that way. similar to the world in which we reside. We reside within a world of false choice. I mean, George Carlin had that very poignant metaphor where, you know, you have the illusion of choice. But he was only using that metaphor to simply speak to the systems of power, what he would call artificial choice, artificial meaning man-made. So man-made systems have put this into play, but perhaps that is throughout the world, right? Perhaps this is a world of an illusion of choice. If you can break through that illusion, if you can perhaps, as the alchemists were talking about, marry the mutually interdependent yet paradoxical states back into one, then perhaps you can reach back to God. And again, God isn't that external thing. It's something that perhaps it appears to me to be something that's purely internal. This is where the Platonic cave analogy comes from as well. You go into the cave to thus find enlightenment. Then, once you understand the tenebrosity of the cave, you understand what is good and what is bad, what you have lost by descending into this state, perhaps. Then you reascend from the cave, from the subterranean, back into the light. It's similar to the tree as well. This is why the tree is always used. The Boda tree, the Sephiroth, all of even in the Celtic world as well. The Druids, the knowers of the oak. Well, what does the knowers of the oak mean? Well, the oak, of course, is deciduous, so it's seasonal. And as well, because it's seasonal and not evergreen, it's something that it moves with the current of time. The river of time carries it along, a bit like Orion, a bit like mankind as well. So, and furthermore as well, it's hemi-cannibalistic, which means that when the mulch comes, when the fallen leaves turn into mulch, it gains sustenance from its own members, similar to how systems of power work as well, and similar to how the world works too in a more macrocosmic sense. So the oak knower is that he knows of the oak from its seedling, from its monad. So from that small seed, that abyssal part of the tree that then sprouted into the subterranean roots. The subterranean roots then gained its sustenance from the subterranean, from the void, from the abyss, from the descent, this spiritual involution, and then it broke on through to the other side, as Jim Morrison stated, right? It became a tree. And then eventually, as the tree dies, it mirrors the roots. All of this is just part of the fabric that is almost, it's like the tapestry of truth. You don't have to go into YouTube and the whole vista of conspiracy videos to find the truth of this world. It's literally written into the fabric of it.
Yeah. No, it's quite when you
that's
just
very
look at
beautiful,
how.
tree symbolism. Please
Go
continue.
ahead. No, you go ahead, brother. You go ahead.
I was just gonna add. I'll try not to be too lengthy. Was this the world axis, right? So the tree obviously represents the world axis, represents this Meru. Now we've associated Meru with Kailashi, but there are differences of opinion within India exactly where Meru is. And if it is Kailash, Kailash looks like a pyramid to me. Go and check that mountain out. Go read up all about what's happened with that mountain. No one's been up Kailash to come down to talk. And everybody that went up, they came down and they got really old really quickly and passed away from old age when they were young. It's like a phenomenon. It's weird. But it seems like it's a chunk of technology that's left behind. But we look at it, the older myths speak about Rupus Nigra and the two dragons of Rupus Nigra, right? This is there's two dragons protecting Rupus Nigra, and it's supposed to be the center of the world and the north, and it's that black rock that military industrial corporation has taken the name of, Black Rock,
Yep.
which I find rather quite interesting because we're talking about the North Pole here, and obviously the North Pole is that world axis, and as we know, it used to be, Draco, and then it switched. So all this dragon symbolism that we have, which relates to this totem pole of the world. Obviously, as a shaman, when you create a totem pole, you're replicating this, which represents obviously the chakras in the spine, and the elevation of consciousness, which is literally like it's like a tree. But it's very interesting, the way this tree symbolism has been thrown at us these days, and we see it everywhere, right? And it's very subtle, and I find like it's fascinating when we start to look at just exactly what are these these symbols that we're being brainwashed with. And like the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, like, okay, so now there's supposed to be these two trees, and this is very interesting because this relates to what we were talking about just now, right? So I'll bring it back onto the screen here. So we've got here the star. Now, what makes the star special, other than the fact that it's the 11th house, and the 11th house rules over the future, plans, the paradigm, what's happening politically, communities, how people communicate, how they connect, how we see ourselves within the group dynamic, how we fit into the group, how we express our community, and communism is a big part of what this means, that communist element, what is common to all of us. And it also relates, of course, to on a fairly subjective level to our ability to be able to be an individual as opposed to being part of the collective. Now, this is opposite to Leo. Leo represents individuality, like in its totality form, right? The number one, Leo, the lion. That is totally in alignment with the individual. Now, this is Aquarius. Obviously, the astrology behind this card is on the opposite side of the wheel. And so this has got a relationship with Leo in the same way that justice has a relationship with strength, which is interesting. Justice has a relationship with the emperor. Now, emperors, obviously, I didn't get that card up, but I'm sure you know the emperor. He's got red over him. He's got like blue armor on, ice armor. He's got the armor of the charioteer on. And so you can see this relationship between Aries, right, and Libra. Libra is the furthest out from the wheel. It's midway, and the wheel revolves around Libra, if you want to imagine it like this. And Libra is that point, and Aries is the other point. And so Libra represents the scales of justice. So you can see there's a similarity here being expressed between the scales of justice. Let me see if I can pull up the card justice here quickly for a moment. So here we can see the scales of justice, right? And we've got the sword of truth, discrimination. We've got the Aries of the fire and the blood and the potency and the passion of Aries being reflected here, but refined by Venus and refined by Saturn. And the crown of Leo sits upon the head. So we can see justice is like telling us an interesting story in terms of pivoting the wheel of the zodiac. And then we look at Leo, and so we see the Leo has got the Saturn above the head, right? The infinity, the notion of time being cyclical, and the toric field that's being twisted upon the head. Playing with the lion obviously represents the lion represents information in a sense, represents that ability to become a dominant force of the mind that is able to go out and hunt for the truth, as it were. And obviously leadership is implicit in this notion, because we can see that she's obviously got this lion very much tamed. So taming the lion represents taming the mind in a sense. And so we see the opposite side of this coin, the opposite side of this card, when we look at it, as being reflected here by Aquarius. Now, Aquarius shares a similarity, as we can see. Yeah, it's all about balance. It's all about balancing the information that Leo represents, right? And spreading the information so that you can produce fertility. And so this is obviously Saturn's card. It's got the star of Saturn, as you were pointing out, the 8th star there. And then we see in the opposite form, when we look at Leo, we see here Saturn's 8 above their head. So we see that the Sun and Saturn have got this special relationship. But now when we look at justice, this gets really interesting. Because justice is doing for Leo and for strength what Aquarius is doing, but it is doing it for Aries. So now, instead of talking about the solstice of summer, which has just passed when you go into Leo, right? The summer solstice in Europe is in Cancer, right? And it is obviously, sorry, did I say Cancer? I meant, June.
Yeah, it's Cancer, is it not? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's actually just before. It's literally going into Cancer, shall we say? And so the summer solstice comes just before Leo. So Leo, though, then becomes an expression of that power in manifestation, because obviously something becomes what it is, but what follows it expresses it in its most perfected form. And so we can see this notion between this justice card balancing these forces. And I think that this is really going to give us an insight into exactly what's being spoken to when we look at this notion here. Because what we see when we look at this one, right? The justice card, you can see it being reflected when we look at this Saturn. Now, Saturn is between 4 and 6, right? So 4 to 6 crosses 5. 4 is stagnation. 4 is solidness, dependence on form. And this is the perfect manifested form in terms of the number, the builder. 4 represents the builder, represents the architect, represents logic and planning the future. Uranus numbers 4. Also, 4 represents the North Node, right? 6 represents, obviously, Venus, represents harmony. So 4 is stagnant and can't move towards harmony. It requires 5. It requires Mercury to fill the gap between the stagnancy of 4, which is so well constructed and well built, and the harmony of 6, which is really the movement of 5 that we've been bringing out the splendor of 4 in order to manifest the harmony of 6. And we can see here this line basically is this line separating these other two paradigms. And then we've got 1, 2, and 3, right? The first 3 principles. And then we've got those first 3 principles represented as 7, 8, 9. I covered this extensively, and I really deep dive into this, into the Enneagram, the occult Enneagram series that I'm uncovering. You can find it if you go and look on my channel at Bush Whisperer in YouTube. You'll see I've got a folder in my podcasts for that. You can take a look. I've started breaking it down. I'm going to break it down in detail. But here you can see the 7 and the 8 and the 9 representing in a sense, think of it as the evening. Think of it as the evening becoming the day. Think of it as movement. The 6 is thus embodying the movement of 5 that is becoming 7, the hermit, going into oneself, going into find out the source of beauty and the arts, which is Venus, but journeying inwards in such a way as to perfect through number 8 the material and the spiritual, and to bring into actualization the activist, which is the humanitarian, and that which completes in order to fulfill the cycle so that the cycle can start again. And so there you can see these numbers are being brought out. So this is basically a depiction of the Enneagram. And if you look at Vedic cosmology, you'll see that they actually draw a horoscope in like this. So if you ever go to India and you get a horoscope done, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to look like a square of Saturn. And they're going to map out these 9 influences in your chart. And obviously, I didn't mention this, but 7 represents the South Node and represents Neptune. So when we're looking at the importance of 7, 8, and 9, as it relates to the importance of 1, 2, and 3, you see that there's this connection here between 1 and 7, right? Which is quite an interesting concept. And you'll see there's a connection as well when we look at it between all of the opposite focused numbers. Like obviously there's a connection here with 1 and there's a connection here with 3. And so you'll see how these things work in conduit. There's a balance here moving between this yellow and this green. There's a balance here moving between this yellow and green. There's a balance here. You can see this all mapped out onto the enneagram. If you go and look at the enneagram, I don't mean the New Age enneagram that is so good for prediction. The New Age enneagram that was created in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s is a New Age thing. I'm talking about using the sacred geometry from the occult and using the numerology that is known and existing in astrology from Chaldea and from the Vedic school of knowledge, because the numbers have a particular vibration. However, the world has changed the enneagram for us, and they've got a new enneagram for us to model onto. So it's literally showing us how they are remodeling our consciousness and remodeling our reality, and they're fitting it to a particular design plan. And so they are not just terraforming the world, they are terraforming our consciousness. And in order to terraform our consciousness, they need to give us a new enneagram that will terraform our consciousness as per those ideals. And that is the map that they are using to try and reorganize the time flow. And so it's almost like they're trying to hijack the very nature of reality in changing this. Like this ancient enneagram, which is basically what we're looking here when we look at the screen, right? This is the old enneagram as it is in India. This is what a horoscope looks like. And when you look at what a horoscope looks like, this is it. They don't draw it in a circle, they draw it as a square of Saturn. And the square of Saturn thus becomes like a very powerful way of understanding the universe. And why Saturn is so important is because Saturn represents the 3 worlds of time: the past, the present, and the future. And when we're looking at the past, the present, and the future, we're looking at Saturn's domain. And so this sort of becomes like a really powerful, you can see, we've got the 9 moving through the 0, because obviously at the center of the wheel is going to be Pluto. Pluto represents 0 in Vedic and other forms of numerology, if you care to go and look it up. So Pluto's always going to be the center of the wheel, and Pluto is that powerful agent of change where 9 goes through the eye of the proverbial storm, which you've got to imagine this as a spiral or as a toric field specifically, which expresses spiral mathematics. So you've got to go through the eye of the storm in order to end up at 1. Hence 9 goes through the eye of the storm and comes out as 1, but we've got to carry Pluto's placeholder, so it becomes 10. Yeah. And once 10, 20, 30, 40, 90 has gone through the eye of the storm, it has to come out with another 0. It has to be 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. So this is a way for us to understand how our numbers have come into being, bringing this Pluto energy of powerful transformation. But now we look at the number 4, and the number 4 here holds the key. This is this relationship between 4 and 7, which is the south node and the north node. But in order to get to that point, which is the next beginning, we've got to go through the adventurer, because 4 is stagnant, 4 is fixed, 4 is all of the information and the knowledge of the building, but it's all about foundations, it's all about structure. So they have hijacked this principle of Saturn, which represents the balance between the physical and the spiritual. And it's the higher octave of the builder of 4. 4 has got all the knowledge of the universe, but it's not dynamic. It needs this dynamism of this process where the adventurer, Mercury, gets hold of the static energy, brings it to an octave of movement so that the artist can express the inner emotional field and bring out the currents of consciousness, so that the mystical process of going inwards deep to understand what is the source of this inspiration that drives the artist, so that the mystic can then connect with the spiritual. And then I call him the workaholic. It's a very rough name, but Saturn represents your career, accolades, what success you've had in your world, your reputation, being famous, all of these things, and money, of course, money and stockpiling and building this is all Saturnial concepts, which is why the number 8 is always associated with money. You dream about spiders, you're dreaming about money, basically, or success in the workplace. So So then, but the reason why this success and worldly success comes in Saturn's field is because Saturn represents balancing the spiritual and the physical. Now, when you mess with time flow, when you mess with the field of time, you're actually messing with your ability to balance the physical and the spiritual. So the three world problem, I think, is their way of undermining our understanding of Saturn, our understanding of this fundamental and very, very important, I would say, absolutely important glyph that really represents the whole of the tree of life here. Because this is the entire enneagram being mapped out, showing us the polarities of the enneagram, right? Showing us that what I was talking about just now in the other enneagram, where you can see here, you've got the yellow and you've got the 1, the 2, and the 3. And if you look at it very carefully, you can see this reflecting here, that from that activism point, the 1 is putting into action all of that activist energy in order to lead the next spiral. The 2 is then turning it into something that has more structure. So it's slowing down the vibration of that intense activist energy, which was expressed so perfectly in 1, slowing it down to become more structured. Then the optimist of Jupiter optimizes that energy through expansion. But the process of expansion moves towards a natural conclusion of crystallization. And the crystallization means it becomes stuck. So we can see that this 1, 2, and 3 is expressing this principle of getting towards being stuck. And then 4 becomes that important pivoting point. 4 to 6 becomes the pivot, but that pivot cannot come into being without Mercury being in the middle of the enneagram. So Mercury needs to be there. That agent of change needs to be there in order to empower the crystallization of 4 to become the active dynamism that is the harmony of beauty, which is the artist's domain. And so we see this is so clearly reflected when we look at this glyph. I've got to remove that first. When we look at this glyph, we can see that so clearly reflected in the polarity here between 4 and 6, as 4 moves towards 6. So they want to break up these two triangles for us. And so you can see here, here's the 3-body phenomenon, right? 1, 2, and 3 bodies. Here it is, the etheric, the astral, and the causal. Yeah. They're showing us these 3 bodies of Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna, or the pillar of severity, the middle pillar of knowledge, and the pillar of love, or peace, or forgiveness, however you want to look at the mild pillar. And so these 3 principles are really what's being embodied in this glyph, and they've hidden this from us. You can also see there's an interesting point here. Look at these 2 arrows. These 2 arrows are pointing towards each other, and these 2 arrows are pointing away from each other. And notice what they've done with it. Is it like a W? Is it like an M? It's representing M and W in a sense, which is quite interesting. And they've taken the square and they've turned the square into a rhombus. So they really want to contort the field of the rhombus. So this glyph is if you want to turn the square into a rhombus and you want to implode the system so that you can reprogram it. And so all these Saturn cults, this was their mission. This was their mission, fundamentally, to reprogram humanity. And I think this is really what we're getting to in the crux when we look at what is this collapsing of this Western world is about collapsing our knowledge of what science is, because science is the domain of Saturn. What do you guys think about that?
I think you're totally on point. Pardon me. Even between the 4, 5, and 6, that Mercury is almost it's akin to water in many respects, and there's a reason Mercury as well is even associated with some of the more feminine principles, is because within Jung's work, the feminine was seen as the sort of seductress. Of course, she had that maternal aspect to her, which was the more positive aspect, but the more malefic aspect would have been the seductress, or, a bit like water, a bit like fire. It entrances you. But with water, the way that water would entrance you, again, a bit like Mercury, is that even within a microcosmic drop of mercury or water, the entire world is reflected within it. So you never really see mercury. You never really see water. You see what mercury or water reflects. And it's similar with the 5, of course, because we have 5 limbs. We are the sort of fallen stars, if you will, the fallen pentacles. And we are, like what you're saying, Franklin, we are being pushed between this sort of, again, the mutually complementary or mutually interdependent paradoxes of state. You even see it between the major thresholds. So you have the 4, which is rigid. That is the base of the pyramid, or just the square. It's that, or the cube. It's that which is rigid. It's unchanging, and of course, it's angular as well. So there's a transmutational aspect to it. And then you go to the 5, which is held between the rigidity, the natural order of the 4. Within that 5, that fluid state, it's circling within a myopic vessel. I guess you could call it a living clay vessel, if you will. Our body is a narrow confine, a corralment. And then it goes to the 6. The 6, in my view, as well, can also be linked with the 9. Because the 9 and the 6 are sort of inverted. You see that with Cancer as well. Cancer is also associated with the moon. And it's again, you could almost, it's this idea of the axis of the Saturn and the moon. So Capricorn and Cancer, again, that's a big thing in the New Age, but it's this notion of descent, literally. But the 6 is almost like the 666, again, if you were to vertically stack them, a bit like the 999, if you were to vertically stack them, which offers the inverse meaning, shows a sort of vertical spiral of descent. So 6 is one rotation, one loop of that vertical spiral. So 6 is almost this number of control as well, of containment. Moreover, as well, you'll notice within that magic square, it all adds up to 15. Both the columns and the rows. This is also known as the Masonic magic square. This is why the Masons are very, in terms of the axis of their reverence, is Saturn to the utmost degree. And this is why you find, for example, in Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike, on no less than 3 occasions I've read through reading Morals and Dogma, that he mentions that Kabbalah and Masonry are essentially the same. The symbolism is the same. If you were to take Kabbalism out of Masonry, there would be no Masonry. There's also other pre-20th century philosophers and Masons that also state the same thing. So
it's interesting that a lot of physicists say the same thing about physics as well.
Oh, really?
They say Kabbalah and theoretical physics, or I guess it would be theoretical physics.
Yeah,
are the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah,
but it's definitely a twisted way, and they're looking at it. They're twisting it to make it fit in a way, but yeah, they do say it.
Well, do you know what's strange about that? You have what they call the Big Bang, but it's really just the theory of inflation, cosmic inflation. And that is completely part of the Simsum. It is the Simsum. And it's this idea that, I guess you could say the void, also known as the Ein Sof, was impregnated, or before it was the Ein Sof, I guess it was Tohu and Bohu, which was what do those words translate as now? Chaos and chaos in the void, essentially. And it was impregnated by a sort of, going back to the Enneagram, the seed, the monad, the one. It was impregnated by the one. And from that was birthed what Pluto is. Pluto is wealth. It's the dissipator. That's Greco-Roman mythology, at least. It's the dissipator. It's the Dis is wealth and pater is father, so the wealthy father. But why would he be the wealthy father if he's associated with the void and the abyss and death?
He's the
Well, that's-
ferryman.
The ferryman as well, yeah.
And
So
he gets all those tokens, you know?
yeah, he gets all the tokens, yeah. So
I'm
he's
sure he'll
getting
be
the
running
sustenance
Eventually,
the lore.
Eventually, be running the metaverse, and they'll be getting the tokens from the blockchain.
Well, there you go, the tokens from the blockchain. Well, there's another idea, the blockchain. You have these blocks, right? The lapis. So remember, the lapis is it's similar to the stone, right? Well, it is the stone in Latin, but it's
Yeah,
similar to the
from
stone of the
Atlantis.
philosophers. So you have, again, remember the lapis prior to it becoming rigid, like the four. It was completely fluid. It was a fluid substance. It was, if you will, mercurius. And all things are states of mercury, or states of mercurius, as the alchemists mentioned. It's this sort of universal canvas, if you will, this universal solvent, similar to water. And
I'm starting to think they are hiding plasma within Mercury now, the more we talk about Mercury.
yes, but you'll notice as well, see Pluto's sign. Pluto's sign looks very much like the discharge of a plasmic discharge. You also see that through, well, this idea of the plasma apocalypse. But very interestingly, if you look throughout all of the various cross-cultural mythologies, I mean, pretty much every one, they'll all have that same sign of almost like a man with his hands above his head, which of course is that's also the Egyptian Halul sign, where we get the word, of course, hallelujah, right? So, and also you see it within the Battle of Rephidim and the name of the Lord, the Shin letter, that for the Israelites to win, I guess, against I think it was the Amalekites in the Battle of Rephidim, it was Moses who had to hold his hands above his head and cast the symbol or the shadow of the Shin letter upon the battle. And then 2 Kings 21:7, the name of the Lord is etched into Jerusalem. Also, it's etched into our heart. So you have the three ventricles of the heart. If you were to cut the heart anteriorly, not meaning to be, morbid, you would see that same Shin letter. And furthermore, on Jerusalem, it's the three valleys plus the various hills create, again, if you were to look at it topographically, it creates that Shin letter. That also goes back to Atlantis, Poseidon's trident. Poseidon is Attic. It has an etymology from Attic Greek, Lord of the Earth. You go to Enki, Lord of the Earth. Ea, Lord of the Earth. It was probably pronounced Ya. So there's the connection again back to the name of the Lord. Ultimately, it's driving us back to this precursor civilization which appeared to worship fish gods, hence Mercury, hence Pisces, hence this sort of duality, this Chinese finger trap, if you will, of mutually interdependent paradoxical elements, which is entirely what Mercury is. That's what Mercury is. It's this fluid state of transformation. And funnily enough as well, all of the deities were either incestuous or they were androgynous, or both. So this idea of divine
it's a perfectly progressive system, There's nothing goes unused. Everyone gets a little piece of everyone else. It doesn't matter if you're related. If you have to eat your mother to survive, you eat your mother. If you have to kill your wife to get out of a parking, there's so many different things that you could. It's a circle of life.
It's funny because it's almost like they're attempting to materialize what was perhaps metaphorical. So with the incest thing, it was the Gnostics have this notion of divine syzygies. The syzygies are couplings. So basically you break down what is previously unitary into a duality. So for example, good and evil. You break whatever the singularity, the unitary expression of that would be. You'd break it down. and you would create that divine syzygy, right? So again, the singularity is Pluto. It's the 0 in the Enneagram, and then you would break it down into 1. But of course, you can't break 1 down into any. It's sort of a recursive, self-referential number. So you have to then break it down into pieces, fractal
It
fragments.
sounds a lot like the Sabbatean idea, kind of, just under a different name.
Well, that's basically Kabbalism. That's just that.
Yeah,
It's
well,
Kabbalism,
it's
taken to its
Kabbalism
direct extreme. Yeah.
Yeah, taken to an extreme that I'm not sure if that's the way things are supposed to be interpreted, but they sure as hell interpret it in a really messed up, sick way.
Oh, somebody's speaking about abraxas, right? So abraxas is almost talking about the syzygies, right? So you have 365 aeons. Now, the reason it's an odd number is of course because of the sin of Sophia. Sophia birthed the demiurge, which then subsequently birthed the world itself. Abraxas, of course, if you look at it, is the embodiment of the chimeric embodiment. It's chimeric because it's this sort of idea of it's within the state of Mercury. It's within the state of transformation. Human is mixed with animal, which is exactly what humanity is mixed with within this world. Arguably, we have a higher state, and then we have the instinctual. So I think you posited the idea. I think it was in a different Enneagram, Franklin, or it might have been a heptagram. The circles intermixed with circles like the Vesica Pisces, and you have intuition facing or reflecting instinct within the veil or the abyss, if you will, of the imagination. It's similar in a sense to Abraxas and this idea of man and the animal intermixed. Similar idea as the Minotaur and Asterion and all of this. But basically what you're seeing with Abraxas is it's the hidden god that is beyond good and evil. It is ultimately the primordial state of man beyond this world. And you'll also find as well, you'll have IAO intermixed with that. The IAO it's Yah. It's the Greek word for Yah. But interestingly, this ties us all the way back to the Hyksos, which were the Proto-Israelites. Proto-Abrahamism was locked up within, I guess you could call it the Hyksos-related or crypto-Hyksos Atonist cult, which was monotheistic as well. And it worshipped the sun, the literal disk of the sun, the material manifestation of the sun. How does that link to Saturn? Well, when you look at the Mesopotamian star catalogues, the sun and Saturn were always interlinked. This is why Saturn is also known as the Black Sun. Again, the sun and Saturn are mere syzygies, I guess you could say, in the Enneagram of Pluto, right? Or of that abyss, of that 0 point, that zero order point. But IAO is the Greek onomatopoeic word for the kick of the donkey, the sound of the donkey. Eaw, as we would call it. So this links with Set. When the Hyksos invaded Egypt, northern Egypt, Set, the animal of Set, which is only known as the Typhonian beast, it became associated with the donkey. This is why the Alexandromenos graffiti, the oldest graffiti depicting Christ, depicts Christ in a very derisory manner with the head of a donkey. So you have this same idea of the chimera. But in Abraxas' terms, you see the cockerel. Now, what is the cockerel a symbol of? It's the symbol of the dawn. It's the herald of the dawn, if you will. So you see the same alchemical and also tarot fool's journey, because what happens within the tarot, within the alchemical journey, you also see it in the Splendor Solace, by the way, which is also 22 plates. Right at the end, you'll always have the rubedo. which is the color of the lapis philosophorum, which is the lapis philosophorum, by the way, is pretty much the same as the abraxas. It's the conjunction of all things into one. It is the realizing once more within the state of spiritual involution of our consciously evolved state from which we have fell from. And within this heros gamos, this coincidentia oppositorum, the union of opposites, one finds God. So Abraxas is the true God, the hidden God, the God beyond the lands in between. All of these ideas, it's basically the Enneagram, if you will, in that sense, rolled up into
aren't there
one.
different, like the Valentinians would say is the
The
Ogdoad.
Ogdoad.
Ogdoad, but then there's also like the Greek idea of him being basically a demiurgic character.
There is you also have the Christian idea as well, the Christian Gnostic idea. There's a few sects within later Christian Gnosticism, just prior to Irenaeus and such, which also held to that idea. But
And like also like you were saying Set, because I mean the 365, that implies Saturn and time.
yes, he is the demiurge. But remember, the demiurge is a part of us.
Yeah.
The demiurge is that builder part. The Enneagram is contained within all of us. And ultimately our true state is that zero order of being. And it's only by our I guess you could call it our fall from Eden, right? This is this notion. We fell from the perfected state, and we fell into what we were searching for what we believe to be paradise, but ultimately it is only the paradise of the demiurge. The demiurge is an archetypal force inherent within us as part of the mosaic of our psyche. This is what Abraxas is. It's the mosaic of the psyche, found in or rolled up into one singular image. So it's a composite image. But as well, you see so they had the Ogdoad, that was also present within the Egyptian mythology. That Ogdoad means the 8 primordial beings. You also had in the Egyptian system, Ptah, or Pitha, which was, he was the god of craftsmen. Interestingly, he had a priest class, a bit unlike the Masons, who wore aprons, and they were called the great directors of the craft. So, I mean, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, no pun intended. And then below that, so these are all the syzygies of the Gnostic notion. Started off with Bythos and Sige, profundity and silence, and then broke down. Again, this is the one, it has to fragment itself continually. This is why after each successive generation, you get a dilution of being, a dilution of state, until it must contract once more. You could think of the various world ages as video game updates, right? It has to re-update itself, or as we do when we sleep. We go through that disorientation of sleep, that negredo, if you will, the blackening, the putrefaction of sleep, where we have to thus defragment our minds, or our minds literally go insane. You know, and we die eventually if we don't have enough sleep, if we become sleep deprived. It's a similar idea with the world ages. So, and then of course you go from the Ogdoad to the Decad, which is the 10 syzygies, and then the Dodecad, which is the 12 syzygies. And then it works its way down from there. I forget what goes beyond that point, but you get this. Basically, what you're seeing is the multiplication, which is also an archetype of Saturn. It's also an archetype of Jupiter as well. But
there's even an Egyptian translation as the Ouroboros, which, I mean, Jesus, just there's so many.
Ouroboros is exact. That's basically the symbol of the world. It's the symbol that maintains the homeostatic, perpetual state of Abraxas, the true God, or literally God, made manifest in the flesh. So it's what traps God in the flesh, if you will. It's that idea. It's all, again, there's different ways that this is interpreted. But fundamentally, the broader idea that the philosophies broach, which you could all arguably describe them as Gnostic in some sense, meaning they're searching for the gnosis, which breaks them free from all of this, which allows them to, again, like what you see in similar Abraxas stones, man paying homage to the image of Abraxas. What does that mean? Well, he humbles himself to his own, essentially his own divine image, which is the divine image of God. Because remember, we are created within the breath or the image of God. Not necessarily a physical image, but a spiritual image, which has been impressed upon a living clay. So it's all of these ideas that are interlinked, ultimately.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I like the way you bring the dodecahedron into the... Josh, I'm in a live mode, sweetheart. I like the way you bring the dodecahedron in there, because that obviously relates to Mercury, to the sphere of water, and it's very interesting how that 20-sided, side, sort of that holds all of the other geometry within it. If you look at the geometric patterns of it in the sacred geometry,
There's a lot there in water, man. There's a lot there in water.
You can't escape the water.
We should look at water on another show, guys. I actually have to bounce because I have to get some work done before I have to go get the girlfriend from work.
Big love, brother.
But keep talking. But all you guys stay on as long as you want. And like next time, if you guys want to get into water, and I think we should get more into Abraxas. I think that might be a fun show.
I absolutely agree. I've got a few things to say about Abraxas, which I think is you've done a wonderful undress, Silas. Big love to you, dear brother. Travel safe.
Much love, guys.
Well,
good seeing you, Silas. Good seeing you, Regan. You guys have a good conversation, and definitely you guys should come back and have a chat with us next week again, for sure.
Much love, man. Blessed be.
Much love, guys.
Yeah, man. That whole Abraxas story is mind-blowing, and especially the way it links up with the Yaldabaoth story. Yeah, Yaldabaoth, which is like obviously, I think it's been misrepresented. We did an actual show on that. For those of you that are interested, we broke down the entire story of the Gnostic creation, but without adding to it, just really telling the story. And it's something you find a lot of people talking about it, but they don't tell the whole story. The whole story of the creation and all of how the creation takes place. And when you look at it, you'll see there's like a whole nother side to Gnosticism. It's been represented in one way, but I think this is part of the brainwashing that they want us to be in. This Yaldabaoth image and the image of Abraxas, which we've got on the screen here, well, this is one of Abraxas's images. I see it as being like very much the same as this. And so this is Edifice Levi. I don't know if those of you that have followed his work, Edifice Levi was around in the, 1800s? And he actually came up with this idea of the balance between matter and physicality. This is obviously Baphomet. So when I see a Baphomet and I see Abraxas, they seem to symbolize the same thing, and they seem to be pointing an ood back towards the number 8. And the number 8, something you mentioned earlier, which was really beautiful, is the relationship between 6 and 9. Hey, Silas, you can see here in the feminine, the relation takes it to 8, and the masculine relation takes it to 9. So it's got a direct, in-your-face relationship with 9 with 6, and it's got a subtle relationship with 8. And so we see why the 6 is such an important part of magic, why the hexagram is so central to magical rituals and practice, because it's got an ood to the 8 and the 9, but the 8 represents that balance between physical and spiritual reality, that union between the 4, the builder, and its shadow, from whence 4 came. Obviously the Egyptians were like fascinated with 4, and they managed to build a pyramid that's actually got 8 sides, except on one time of the year you can see the 9th side. How incredible is that? So this 4 carries this mystical knowledge of 8 and 9 in it. That's in the biggest pyramid, the super pyramid that's out there. But it's really interesting when we look at the story of Abraxas and the story of Yaldabaoth and the story of this this creation of Eliphas Levi, which Baphomet, which also represents it. I think Abraxas is the same idea, isn't it? If we look at the older glyphs of Abraxas here, where is it? Here we go. We can see that there's this very interesting thing that's being shared here. He's got this is the whip, right? Now, this is a symbolic representation of two things, right? It's a representation of Lamet, which is obviously the ox goad, which obviously it's an older form of it, which relates to how you would get an ox to move. You give it a little bit of a tickle. It's also how you get a horse to move, technically. It's also symbolic here. It's also like a measuring device, which is very interesting. And the other one is the shield. And so we've got the shield representing like what is fixed, what is matter, right? Then we've got the 6 of harmony, which represents the other active 6 process, which becomes 8 and 9. And then in the middle, we've got the 5. Notice the head. Is this Abraxas' head a chicken head? Am I right?
I believe so.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Chickens were symbols of courage, courage in old Europe, yeah?
Yes. Yeah. They were.
Interesting,
Yeah.
that. Like the warrior, the inner warrior. And there were times when even Mercury was celebrated as being related to bringing a success in war. So it's very interesting how like this Abraxas and this symbolic union of all of these archetypes are really seems to be coming from Yaldabaoth.
Yeah.
I think that's what you were saying. Is that right, Silas?
Yes. Well, of course, within the physical. So, of course, Abraxas is the physical manifestation of that within a sigil. So, yeah, it would in the physical world derive from Yaldabaoth. Or, of course, as we're viewing it, it's the demiurges or the Yaldabaoths. You could call it idolatrous manifestation of that. Yeah.
Right hand man.
Right hand man. Yeah.
My right hand man. He does my deeds for me, kind of thing. Yeah, man. I definitely think there's like so much. I think we could probably have a whole discussion. Somebody was asking about your channel, Silas. It's at Silas Speaks, right?
Yeah.
So go and check it out at Silas Speaks. You will find Silas there. And I'll put it on here so that you can see it if you don't know where that is. But it's definitely worth checking out his channel. He's got a lot of really cool information out there. And did you give us your @sign, by the way, Regan?
Yeah, I did in the private chat.
Okay.
It's just at JRegan2IB.
They make it sometimes really tricky to put links here. I don't know why they do it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Let me stick a link in here. But I find that if I take away the www.com, then it will definitely work. But you guys can easily just, let's try and put it through as it goes and see if it moves through there. Seems like it's flowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it seems like it's working. So, Metatron. The two faces of Metatron, huh? Metatron has got a double face. Is Metatron not a very fascinating part of the story? Because Metatron is above the veil and below the veil, is it not? So Metatron, in a sense, has a relation with Mercury in a hidden context.
Yeah.
And they use the angel Sandalphon for the earth element, do they not? Instead of the second Metatron, which it used to be used for. Here's an interesting point about the Kabbalah. People associate the Kabbalah with Judaism, and I want to shoot that out of the water. Because Kabbalah is so old. It's like, if you look at the construction of the original Phoenician language, there were 22 characters and they were drawn from hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt or ancient Chem. And those 22 relate to the 22 major arcana, right? Like the whole tarot is basically there and in its inception. So this is why the major arcana is related to the 22. They will tell you that it's a theory and that it's a this and a that, but if you look at it and you practice it and you study it, you'll see the relation between the major arcana and the 22 letters of what became Hebrew, which is really just Paleo-Hebrew redressed through the Aramic lens, right? Aramic changed the glyphs a little, but that was just because of the Semite tribes separating and reorganizing. When you go back to the Paleo-Hebrew, there is no difference. Paleo-Hebrew and Phoenician is the same language. So
Totally agreed, yeah.
when we talk about Hebrew, we're talking about the remnants of Phoenician. It's probably the closest language to Phoenician around, I would say. What do you think?
I would totally agree with you. In fact, I would say that if you look at ancient Hebrew, though it did diverge, and we can't really take it as one monolithic thing. Of course, like any language, it goes through a development. I mean, look at the way we speak to compared to people in the 1940s or 50s. We've got a different way of expressing ourselves. So it's not one monolithic thing. But I do agree that the alphabet is completely taken from Phoenician. The language was probably, if not, it was based upon Phoenician essentially, and then it diverged from there over the ensuing centuries. But yeah, it's even the way that they view their gods and such it's quite akin to Phoenician or Aramaic as well. A lot of people didn't really speak ancient Hebrew. A lot of the Israelite kingdom, before it fractured in the 9th century, they spoke primarily Aramaic. They even wrote in Aramaic. So it's this, you know what I mean? It's very weird, isn't it? But sorry, man. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You brought up something that made me think there as well for a moment. Like, people don't realize that the Phoenician language was existing before the Phoenician alphabet. And the Phoenician language was being written with cuneiform from Sumeria. Very interesting. They were not using the cuneiform of the, because there's different kinds of cuneiform, right? The cuneiform that everybody raves about is the Akkadian cuneiform, which is like 1,000, 2,000 years at least, less old than the Sumerian cuneiform. But originally Phoenician was being written with Sumerian cuneiform. So hence you'd speak about Ea, right? Ea. That Ea, which is Sumerian cuneiform for Enki, the original name of Ea, this is lived through into cuneiform of Akkadian as well, is the first of the divine god beings to come to earth other than Allelu. Allelu came before, so we still sing Alleluia, because Allelu was the first of those beings from Nibiru on earth, according to the Sumerian texts. And so Allelu, Ea, Allelu, Ea. Ea was Enki when he arrived. He only later got the title Ea Enki. Ki meaning earth, An-Ki meaning Lord of Earth, Ea-Enki meaning Ea, the Lord of Earth, Ea-Enki, which then becomes Enki, like in modern slang you could say, but it's Ea-Enki. And An means we're all the descendants of An.
Exactly.
So Ea, descendant of An, Lord of Earth, through the power of An. We're all the descendants of An, hence An-Un-Aki. Right, the Anunnaki comes from the An, because we are all. So that An started the original back many thousands of years before they got to Earth. An was the first regent of that planet, which had been like divided. So it's very interesting, like, to look at the roots of it and to see how all those names. And you mentioned lapis lazuli. I love that you mentioned lapis lazuli, because lapis lazuli I always related to Venus, because if we go back to Sumerian times, right, the goddess Venus was lapis. She had a lapis wand, lapis rosary, lapis jewelry, lapis over her heart, and basically she had to go on a journey to the underworld, right, Inanna. And on this journey to the underworld, she had to remove all of her lapis jewelry. So lapis has always been related to Venus in ancient times. And somewhere along the line that changed. But I've always found that lapis lazuli is one of my favorite gems because it speaks about the mystery. You can't hold it without going like, yo, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like you just want to just get sucked into it and go out of your body on a journey because it's like it's the gateway to the mysteries is Venus. And so that ancient Venus title, Gateway to the Mysteries, and lapis lazuli, I've always held lapis lazuli and I thought, this is not Saturn, dude.
Yes.
This doesn't speak Saturn. Saturn's
It's
practical. Yeah.
it's weird as well because I agree with you, and you also see it within the tarot of the High Priestess, and also known as the Priestess of Water in certain tarot decks. But it's this. I think there has been a change. Of course, it's now more a reddish color. Actually, it's a sort of scarlet red, I do believe, that Venus is associated with. This is why in The Matrix and other films you always see the Scarlet Woman. But I think as well, yeah, you that idea that you want to get sucked in, it's like it's enigmatic. It's an enigmatic color. It's very much like the abyss, isn't it? Where you almost feel like you're the beast of the abyss, which is the fish or the serpent as well, and you're underneath that veil of Isis, that veil of Venus, and you can only glimpse through the perforations through that perforated veil, which is obviously the name. Pardon me, the name of the Milky Way. The Milky Way galaxy as we see it, that great rift in the sky. If you're in an area without major light pollution, perhaps as well. That's why they're so all of their utopias are linked to urbanization, because they want to establish that light pollution, because it's almost a projection or an expansion of their will or their desire to hide the power of stars from us, if you will. It's probably the reason why the Catholic Church didn't want the proliferation of telescopes as well. They don't desire you to know the truth of the stars. This is why, as well, the Vatican also have this grand observatory called, I believe the telescope's called Lucifer or Lucifer. So, make of that what you will. But yeah, I do agree that it almost appears as well that inversion, the blue and the red, it's almost to, you could say that, of course, it's part of the syzygy, right, of Venus. Venus also has that malefic aspect to her. So you have the aspect which is one of the holder of the mysteries, the maternal mother of the mysteries, and then the other is this sort of more time-driven, frenzied notion, almost like the overburdening or overcaring mother. That sort of archetype as well. So it could be linked to that, the blue and the red, the change of it. And of course, we've changed world ages since those colors were first formulated. So perhaps that also accounts for the change. But yeah, even somebody mentioned Metatron. I was just going to add a few other things to that. And basically, Metatron is, speaking again to your Enneagram, Franklin, and this puts this fairly succinctly through a numerical and geometric form, which is, if God is the zero order point, then Metatron is the sort of logos. It is the one of God. It is the, like what you're saying, the right hand man, or so it's interesting. The word Metatron, it's sort of an enigma, right? So it has about 3 or 4 different possible etymological roots. So to run through them, we have the first one, which is from Hebrew, matara, which means keeper of the watch, or literally guardian. So you have this idea of the watchers, right? And Robert Monroe talks about that there's a certain class, almost the assisters of the gardener or the demiurge, the craftsman, who is keeping watch on the flow of loosh. He's almost like, I think Robert Monroe calls him the gas pump attendant. So he's making sure that the energy is flowing correctly, that the machine, the yantra within the mandala is working correctly. And then you have as well, from Greek, meta and thronos, which it could be interpreted as the one who serves behind the throne, or the one who occupies the throne next to the throne of glory. You also have Synthronos, which is a similar idea, the co-occupant of the divine throne. So literally the one who is the regent. You see him. He's not, and this will get into N as well. And then, of course, Latin metator, which is guide or messenger, but that's later on. And then potentially metron, which is a measure, but that also derives from metathronos as well. Interestingly, we were mentioning about N and Enki and Ya or Ea. N, interestingly, I think this is actually I think there's some debate amongst archaeologists whether this is of an older Sumerian term or it's newer. But N was also the term that was used, or the title that was used, for the high priest of all pantheons. So if you were a high priest, you were known as N. And this is perhaps where it came to be known as a lord. But then you see it has that connection to, like what you're saying, prior to him being called Enki or Enkig or whatever, he was called N, just purely N. So yeah, it's interesting. And of course that's carried on in Abrahamism as the Lord. You just know him as the Lord. You don't, you even have in the Shema prayer, which I've always found very, very strange, that, it states that Adonai Eloheinu, or the Lord is God. So I've always mentioned if the Lord was God, you would just call him God. But who knows? Maybe there's something to that I'm not quite seeing. But I do agree that Kabbalah and Judaism are totally, they're not the same thing. Kabbalah has actually infiltrated both Judaism, Christianity, and arguably Islam as well. And really, the primary distinction between Judaism and Kabbalah is that Kabbalah has a view of God that is plural. So it views God as almost a literal bisexual being. The Shekinah and the Zeir Anpin, or you also have they're all divided into other things as well. Other names, other titles, other aspects of the divine. But then you have, in Judaism, God is a unitary thing. It's a singularity. It's the 231 gates, if you will, all combined into one. And of course, 2 + 3 + 1 is 6. So you have that 6 in there as well. But that's a Kabbalistic doctrine, but it's just to illustrate the point.
I love that you brought that N into this conversation, the N. And I think that's so true, because I think the high priest and in the old times, we can see it in ancient Egypt, right? Like the Pharaoh was the embodiment of the high priest in a sense, right? Like there wasn't a division between God and the crown the further you go back in time. So I think like the Pharaoh was supposed to be like the supreme priest, and then he had his high priests that worked for him, but he was the main one that would officiate in the rituals. And so it's very interesting how, like, you go back there, it seems like that An starts this kingly priestliness, which is what's carried over to today. And it's very interesting if you look at like you say, the Hebrew, the etymology of this name Metatron is very interesting, because there's two ways of spelling it. You can put the yot in or not put the yot in.
Yeah.
And so often Kabbalists have put the yot in to imply something else, to add a 9 to it, right?
Yeah.
So that's very interesting,
Also with sorry to interrupt, just with the yod as well, it's like the head. You see it within the yod he vav he. If you were to vertically stack that, you get the pentacle of man. You get literally the figure of man. So the the Yod is the fire. And remember, when the world ends, even is stated in the Zohar, and I think it's probably stated in the Vedic traditions and Buddhism as well, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm less clued up on that, is that you'll first have either a flood of ice or water, then you'll have the baptism via fire, or everything is destroyed via fire. Even in Norse mythology, you have the same thing with Ragnarok. The gods and the world destroy themselves in this mass self-destructive conflagration. Then and you have the primary conflagration, which seeks to burn the world tree, yet fails, with the Jotun Igni, which of course igneous, ignite, fire. So and of course that links with Agni, the Hindu god. I'm pretty sure Agni destroys the world as well with fire, if I'm not mistaken. So it's the same principle with the Yod. You'll always have the Yod, always have the fire, this conflict.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think we'll have to probably go into that in a real deep dive and look at the Abraxas relationship with the Yaldabaoth specifically, and how Yaldabaoth is Samael, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're not talking about different people here or different beings. We're talking about Samael. We're talking about Yaldabaoth. We're talking about Lucifer, as it's been depicted. I think it's like a bastardized name because Lucifer was always the name of Venus in ancient times. So Lucifer was the light bringer, was that like the doorway to initiation, or the way that leads you to initiation, shall we say more specifically. Yeah,
I agree.
That gateway that will lead you toward the mysteries. I suppose the initiation comes after you've gone through the gateway, but so you got to travel through her to get to the lunar potential of 2, because they sort of sit on opposite sides of the circle in a sense. So you've got a whole journey to get to that process. But I think, like you say, it's very interesting because that nun is also means fish. So when we come back to that an and n, and that letter n represents to the fish, represents to transformation, right? Represents the astrological sign of Scorpio, which represents the tarot card, death. And so everything pivots around that N. That is like the power of change. And so N becomes a placeholder for Uranus, if that makes sense. And you mentioned Mars. I know you mentioned Venus and red. That's something that I found very fascinating, because when I look at Mars, I see Mars the number 9, or 9 has always been traditionally Mars in numerology, and Mars is that bright red, yeah. And I was having a conversation with people, and they were like, no, they were saying that sex relates to Venus, and I was like, no, carnal sex relates to Mars. In other words, the body's impulse and the body's impulse towards what's the word? Lust.
Lust, yeah.
Lust is a physical thing, but the emotional component of sex is Venus, if that makes sense. Like that sensuous exchange, but that masculine, I got to get in there and finish this. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very Martian thing. Men relate to sex as Mars. Women relate to sex as Venus. When a man's in touch with his feminine side, he can experience a much more powerful orgasm, right? Because he's in tune with the sensuous part of it. And it's like, it's more about enjoying the process. And so that becomes so much more engaging. And then your
It's not about conquest, is it? It's not about conquest. It's not about conquest. It's not about sexual conquest, which would be Mars or Aries, or you see this with the sort of Martian or Aryan quality of the Emperor. But the Empress is she is in reclining and enjoying the simple pleasures of the scenery, if you will.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. Yeah, good point.
So that's like part of this destruction of the West. They want us to relate to sex as conquest. They want to take away lovemaking.
Yeah.
They would take away like the family unit and lovemaking and making children, and like nobody can have kids because they've all had, you know, like
Well,
they've all had those jabs. So
it's
like
the
nobody can have
idea
kids.
of
This is like the goal, right?
even this. There's been a perversion of love as well, and it's you constantly see it, permeate throughout the culture, which is everything is love, or love this or love that, and it's become a very hollow, abstract concept. And I think, like what you're saying, I think you're right, totally on point. It's to take away, it's to hollow out love, and to simply, they're almost, it's masquerading as feminine, but everything within the culture is really hyper patriarchal. I mean, for example, I think it's 90% of, the sort of modern day androgynes. It's all male to female. Male to female. So that sort of transition. So ultimately, there's a deeper, sort of my influence of Spengler is coming through, but there's a deeper psycho-spiritual or spiritual process that's going on here. It's almost like a ritual, isn't it? And it's like what you're saying, they have the masquerade of love, but it's not really love in the sensual aspect of it. That is totally demoted. And love has become this, in the modern day, associated with promiscuity. This love is love. Well, it's self-referential, it's self-recursive. What does that mean? If love is love, and both aspects of those things which are complete reflections are hollow, then you just get the production of a pure hollow experience. You have to, like what you're saying, it's a complementary thing, isn't it? The man must understand his anima, must understand the feminine side of his animus, understand the feminine side of himself, of his psyche, and then of course females must do the same, and then they combine together. It produces joy. It produces fulfillment. It produces the four. It builds order. As opposed to, say, debilitating the psyche, debilitating the psycho-spiritual collective zeitgeist, which ultimately that's what it's doing right now, right? Everything is being invented. A lot of people become offended when I say it's hyper-patriarchal because they think I'm being, somehow a feminist or something. But it really quite is. It is. It's men. Well, for example, the whole modern androgyne movement is to destroy the feminine. Yeah. It's to destroy men
so that men
process.
become
Yeah.
obsessive about being men.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. But bingo. That's the most accurate way I've heard it put. That is, yeah, it's very accurate. Yeah.
It's very interesting. Like I was having this conversation with my girlfriend, and so I'm going to be open. Yeah, I'm going to be very, very open. I hope like YouTube can handle it. Hold your pants on. Keep your pants on, YouTube, because it's going to get really honest here. So we were talking about men with the desire for anal entry, and there's the word "an" again. Anal, right? And so a woman's perspective on this, in her experience, every man that wanted to be anal had some kind of a deep-seated psychological issue around their relationship with women. Very interesting to get that from a woman's perspective. It made me really contemplate it because, well, I'm proud to say I've never been interested in anal. I once accidentally went there. I was like, whoa, no. But I think as a man, if you want to be honest with yourself, if you feel a desire for anal, you really got to check that out, dude. You got to sit down. You got to analyze yourself. You got to analyze yourself. You got to analyze yourself.
I was actually about to say that. Yeah, the word analysis as well is very strange in that context. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about the anal, and so
all good analogies.
Really popular with the younger generation is anal sex.
It has become very popular. That's one of the biggest pushes in all of your porn industry and even in the movies and everything. I mean, it's not just the gay jokes, but your television, movies, radio, they really push, the back, the butt stuff. And even that in the your mainstream Hollywood realm, right? I mean, it's all about the booty, right? Who's got the biggest butt? And just 50 years ago, it was totally the opposite. It was all about the thin, slender female.
Exactly, yeah.
And now it's like there's women with these injections that, it literally looks like they're carrying around, 2 sacks of potatoes behind them. And that's supposed to be the desire, right? The main pinup girl, the scarlet red woman with the big behind,
Do you know what's quite weird about all of that is that there was a writer called George Bataille, and he discusses this along the lines of the sun. So the sun is the primary, I guess you could call it the monad of our life. We view it, you look at trees, the way that they will grow into the face of the sun. They're trying to reach the sun. And of course, the air will also drive their growth in certain ways too. But they're growing upwards, trying to reach the sun, a bit like Icarus. And of course, they'll never reach it, because if they were to reach it, they would burn up, and the impossibility of it all. But it never stops them trying. There's like an instinct in it. But he mentioned that everything within the world is literally the sacrificial elements or aspects of the sun. And you see this with the Aztec world as well. The reason the Aztec civilization, you could say, failed, of course, we have all of the technological disparity with the European colonizers and what have you, but is because they so loved, I guess you could call it, they viewed sacrifice not as a way to, again, as sacrifice means to make holy of oneself. They viewed it as the literal worship of waste by at least the time that the Spanish conquistadors arrived there, both in the Mayan civilization and the Nahuatl or Aztec civilization. I mean, even if the Spanish didn't arrive, there was so much infighting in the Aztec Empire. There was a great animosity there between, well, at least the Tlaxcalans and the rest of the subjugated tribes, that it probably would have collapsed in less than less than 50 years. It was also going through famine and other such things. The same with the Mayan civilization. It's a similar thing in our civilization. That idea that the big booty woman is now, it's now far more of a sexual. It's more sexually appealing to young men. Even this popularization of anal sex within heterosexual sex culture, I could, if you're to call it that. So, and even on the modern media, it's been popularized too. That it's almost like it's a love or a worship or a reverence for waste. I hate to be sordid like this, but there must be some sort of deep psycho-spiritual reason behind this, which is ritualistic,
Turn love into a shit show.
Turn love into a shit show. That's it. If you're, summing it up, that's pretty much it.
I don't think you can talk about this without the puns just flying out. Oh my God.
Well, I think that was probably a pun in and of itself, man.
Yeah. I know.
But you mentioned as well the analogy. So you have the analogy as well. It's all of these words. It's very interesting how they've come to be. Interesting.
You mentioned as well pitta. Pitta means father in Sanskrit, and you get that mata, mother, pitta. It's just like this is old, old, before Sanskrit, before any of these languages, right? The usual Indo-European root languages, mata and pitta, are in the root languages. and Pitta represents the sky father in a sense. Yeah. Now this was originally worshipped as Patra. Is that right? Am I saying that right? The original sky father of Sanskrit, which was worshipped a long time ago, which was another sort of a idea that relates to Brahm, but not quite Brahm, was Patra. I think that's what it's called. And check me if I'm wrong. It's one of the oldest ones. We did this in a thing. I don't know why.
Yeah,
my
there's
name is...
Deus Patra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we've got that Patre, which became in Greek and Latin, father. And Zeus and Jupiter, Zeus Pater. I think that's what it is. And so Zeus comes out of that, fits into that name. Zeus Pater, Jupiter fits into that name. And so we go back to the original Sky Father. And before all these elaborate names, it was just Pitta, father. So this is going back to like what you were talking about God earlier, right? Like Abba, Pata, Pitta, Pater. We've always related to God the Father, right? And I was thinking about this, like when was it? Was it even this morning? Was it yesterday? I was going like, how long have we been relating to God the Father? Like, without realizing that, we're talking about parentage, yeah? And parentage is like where we come from. If you've got a father, you must have a mother. Goes without saying. You can't have a father. Like a father represents the consort of a mother. They go together. And so it's really interesting, like when we look at God, and we look at the earlier names of God, it relates to them, right? Like you look at the Elohim, that's got a suffix of many, right? Plural. Him is a suffix of plural, and so it's speaking about God, but it's speaking about the feminine goddesses, all in one word, but it's speaking about the plural of them. And then it's like, let us create him in our image.
Yeah.
And I think that this, going back to the Sky Father, this Pitta that we were talking about is where they started the division between the feminine and the masculine and started breaking us towards a patriarchal society that you were talking about, if that makes sense. We started relating to Pitta, the father, and they took mother out of the picture. Mother was still there.
Exactly.
In India, mother's still there. She's still a big part of it. I mean, they just did the mother ceremony like a couple of months ago, didn't they? Or a month ago, just over a month ago, which was the Navratri. That's the celebration of the 9 forms of Durga and the Gayatri. So that's like still celebrates the mother presence in a big way in India, which is quite beautiful to see. They haven't forgotten that, right? But there's still this fatherly thing where we've got this father, and now they've taken Big Brother and they're replacing our father, our science, which is really interesting. Shout out to Slick Dissident. He's always talking about the seance. the seance studies, and how much of our science comes from the Kabbalah. This is another point that you were making.
Yeah.
And how much of our science comes from the study of divinity. It's very interesting. Like, it really starts to build the case that science is a religion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, Isaac Newton. All you have to know, Isaac Newton, probably one of the most famous figures of modern Western science. He had more tomes on the Kabbalah when he died than he ever had on maths or physics or anything like that. So he was a lover of the Kabbalah. He even spoke, or wrote rather. He wrote about red mercury, the latent powers within it. He wrote about Hinduism, the Vedas, and of course Oppenheimer would continue this sort of trend, at least directly speaking, as a scientist speaking of the the Bhagavad Gita, and all of these other various Hindu mythologies. But it's funny, I mentioned it in my video, the plan, the plan of the ages, or the plan of the ages, and right at the end I go through this, and it appears, see throughout, and Kabbalah's basically encompasses this. You go through all of these various ages, even the myths that still persist as cautionary tales, like the Tower of Babel, and even what you see with Mohenjo-daro and Lothal, and some of those areas, by the way, are irradiated, like Mohenjo-daro. So, and you have talk in the mythologies of the Vimanas and things such as that, and the what do they call them? The Astra weapons, I believe they're called. So these great wonder weapons, and it almost appears as though every iterative cycle of civilization, you have the light workers, I guess you could call them, those who want to, they don't care for this world. They simply want to return back home, if you will, the prodigal sons. And then you will have the dark sorcerers who desire to, like what you're saying, cut off our connection with not just the maternal, but with even a better, more complementary view of the masculine, of the father figure. Because like what you're saying with Big Brother, the father figure, the patriarch, if you will, it goes from being a patriarch to actually being a tyrant. And you see that through, for example, the Old Testament of Yahweh. I mean, what father, if you don't believe in him, would, some of the things that, the long myriad of crimes that he committed, he destroys you, he besets your enemies against you, he besieges your towns so that you have to resort to cannibalism. What else did he say? Oh yes, you had to give over all your firstborn to him so that he would strike fear and terror into you. I mean, it's a sky father, but it goes beyond that, doesn't it? It's almost, again, it literally takes on the malefic aspect of the sun. If you were to view the sun or sulfur as the masculine, it takes on the malefic aspect of it, which is Saturn. And remember as well, Saturn was also known as Phaethon, or the Shining One. And I think when they talk about Lucifer, I think that's what they're meaning. It's almost like what you're saying. Of course, Lucifer, or Lucifer, the morning star, was associated with, or also Stella Matina as well in the Latin Vulgate, was associated with Venus. But now it's almost like everything they do, it's all masquerade, right? They're associating it now with Saturn. So when they talk about Lucifer, they're probably talking about Phaethon, which was the Shining One. Even Yahweh, the way he's described. See if you go into Catholic churches, and I noticed this when I was in Portugal. And again, this is total biblical description of Yahweh. He's radiant like the sun, but he makes the dark canopy, or he has clouds of darkness surrounding him. It's the black sun. That's what it is. It's Saturn. That's why on Shabbat, or Saturn's Day, in Hebrew, Saturn is known as Shabbatai. They worship that archetype. Don't get me wrong; it goes beyond mere Abrahamism. It was worshipped as well in Rome and Greece, with the Chronia, the Saturnalia, even the Celtic worlds as well. Arguably, you could say Odin is a very Saturnine entity. Of course, he, like Saturn or Kronos, he also overturned or betrayed Ymir, his father, just like Saturn or Kronos betrayed Uranus or Uranus, which is the way we pronounce it now. But so it's interesting. I think they're everything that they do is an invert. So they always have to invert it. It's a bit like the sigil of Saturn. You go from the 4 to the 5 down to the 6, and like what you were saying, the sigil is almost like they're pushing the cube together, because they're attempting to create almost an artificial cosmic pillar. You push the isometric form of the cube together, and you try and press it down via digital repression and oppression. They believe that they can create that vertical pillar. They can establish an artificial cosmic pillar, an artificial Mount Meru, an artificial Elysian field. And it always fails, doesn't it? There was something else I was going to mention. I totally I can't believe I missed this. But if you look at the Gala priests, now they occurred within Rome with the worship of Magna Mater, which, by the way, arguably Magna Mater was the least feminine. If you look at the statues that still exist of her, she's very very masculine, you know, and she's
There's
associated
Irish,
with our
Scottish connection there, isn't there? In ancient times.
Yes, well, you had as well. There was the goddess Danann. You had that. You also had other goddesses in Scotland, known as one was Bridget. Well, we would know her as Bridget now, but I think the Gaelic pronunciation was Brizzy or Briggy, something like that. It's where our term Brodie comes from, the surname Brodie. So if anyone has that surname, that's that's probably where it derives from. But those were goddesses of that. Saturn was known as Dagda. It was similar to the god Dagda, who had this special magical cauldron, if I do believe, and he could conjure anything from it. So again, like the demiurge from the void, or the Kanoma and the Gnostic ideas. But the Gala priests were priests of Inanna or Ishtar. They were and of course Cybele and Attis later on in Rome. Essentially, they were, or Magna Mater as well, went by. Essentially, they were homosexual, cross-dressing, eunuch androgynes, and you even have an instance of it from one of the tablets where it discusses, if I can find it, and this gets back to our sort of analysis on the strange and perplexing popularization of anal intercourse. Not meaning to be sordid here, but yeah, so it's essentially Enki created the Gala to specifically to sing heart-soothing laments for the goddess Inanna or Ishtar. This goes into mythology surrounding Inanna or Ishtar in both Sumeria and Akkadia. And of course, the Gala literally mean demons. It's a class of demons. It's the Galum, or literally the Gala, the demons, or the Gala demons. And it mentions
send you to the gallows.
Send you to the gallows, yes. Bingo, yes. And of course, in Gaelic, both Irish and Scots, Gal was foreigner. Our word for Gal or Gaul was foreigner, which, very interesting, which makes you wonder about Gaelic. And of course, this goes back to the Irish Annals and the Tuatha De Danann and the Fomorians and all of this. Anyway, it mentions that in one of these clay tablets, homosexual proclivities are implied by the Sumerian proverb, which reads, "When the Gala wiped off his, rear end, he said, 'I must not arouse that which belongs to my mistress,' i.e. Inanna or Ishtar." So in fact, the word Gala was written using the sign sequence Ushku, the first sign having also the reading Gish, or penis, and Nita, male, and the second one, bed, or bed, which is anus, and dur, which is buttocks, meaning that might be a pun involved, right? And moreover, Gala is homophonous with Gala, which later on meant vulva. So you're getting this weird, like what you're saying, this weird inverted, it's like they're attempting to make of the man a hermaphroditic female. And by that, what I mean is a male with breasts, essentially. There's this, throughout the esoteric, there is this sort of championing of this image of the man as a symbol of is a symbol of the divine, is a symbol of God, is a symbol of the Creator. That it's this bisexual hermaphroditic entity which has male genitalia, yet has the breasts of a female. You see this, for example, in the Atenist cult. Akhenaten depicted himself like that. He had an hourglass shape, had male genitalia, yet he had breasts. And of course, he was a male. But potentially, I don't know. But
I think this is a
Yeah.
mercurial thing as well. Goes back and you see like early depictions of the Hermes. There's got some of this going on. I mean, hence today hermaphrodite, the word Hermes. Speaking of Isaac Newton, I've got a copy of Isaac Newton's translation of. Actually, got it in an audio book of that little book of Hermetics.
Oh yeah,
the Emerald Tablets.
Yep.
So he actually translated the Emerald Tablets.
Yeah.
Interesting. Food for thought. He actually translated it, which means he spoke those old languages.
Yes. Yeah.
Food for thought.
It's interesting because he was part, I believe, of a precursor to the Royal Society. In the Royal Society, and you also had the X Club. It was known as. This is probably where the term X-Men came from later on down the line, or the inspiration for it. And the X Club was this part. It was Huxley. I think it was Henry Huxley, which was Aldous and Julian Huxley's grandfather. And they were integral, of course, in sci-fi utopianism. And Julian Huxley was integral in migration, transhumanism, eugenics, and the UN overall. And Henry Huxley, he was a proponent of Charles Darwin. In fact, he was his most ardent defender. Charles Darwin, Francis Galton as well, who was the cousin of Darwin. By the way, the Darwins had a thing, very interesting, sort of ironic, that obviously Darwin, through the theory of evolution, determined and discovered that, close, should we say, familial relations produces, what you would call homozygous deformities, right? It increases the prevalence of them. But yet, in the same vein, for at least 2 generations previous that I can find, they all married their cousins, which were the Wedgwoods. So what was going on there? In one breath, he's stating this is wrong, but in the next, he's doing it.
That's a big Sumerian thing, was that there was this whole thing that happened before they came to Earth. They had the North and the South, and they were at war. And someone from the North had sex with someone from the South, and they became married, and that became the High King and High Queen. And that was the first semblance of peace they had had. Now, they had loads of different races on that planet. The story of Nibiru is there was like loads of races. They had the Sumerians were measured at being, I think they were reflected as being 9 cubits, between 9 and 12, 14 cubits tall, the men and the women. That's like 9 to 12, 13, 14 feet tall. But there were races that were 20 cubits. There was a race that was 45 cubits tall there as well. So they had different races on that planet. And so this is all like documented in the Sumerian chronicles. But what's interesting is that there came a point where there was an issue over birth and the right to rule. And so it was decided that if a king, you see, the kings could have multiple wives. Now, if I had 4 wives, and this was my first wife, A, my second wife, B, my third wife, C, my fourth wife, D, sometimes you couldn't have babies with your sisters. But if it was your sister that you had a baby with, that was automatically the ruler, because they had the most royalty in their blood. And so that became a big part of the culture that Sumer brought to Earth. So this whole incestuous thing,
Mhm.
it goes right back to the Sumerians. This is why, like I said, the Phoenicians were talking, they were writing in Phoenician scribbles,
Yes.
those little squiggles. They were writing in that language because they got the heritage of the Sumerian. And so that's where we find this tradition of all these royals wanting to have it on with their own blood, because that way they believed the blood was more purely royal. Which
Yeah,
is
the blue bloods. There's the blue coming into the idea again with and that links with Mercury too, doesn't it? It's also you could argue it's another allusion to the feminine, but yet perhaps the false feminine in this sense. There was something else to mention too, just on the Enneagram, and I'll have to jump off here unfortunately, but with
at the time.
yeah, I know I've yeah, wow. That's yeah, time flies when you're having fun, but you notice of course with the Bhavra chakra you have Yama, and Yama in Sanskrit means twin, and we were talking about how the two is a gateway to, if you will, the lunar axis, escaping this vivarium. Interestingly, again talking about the inversion of everything. Everything is contained in bytes in the digital world, right? All records are contained in bytes. Of course, as somebody mentioned, they want to upload your consciousness into a virtual world, into a metaverse, a dead verse. The byte itself derives from a Proto-Indo-European root to split. So it's the same idea as you see, even this idea of the shadow of shadows, right? If the creator was the first AI, he was intelligent, an intelligent creator, yet he was perhaps, like Yaldabaoth is, psychopathic, right? There's suffering imbued in the creation. There's a duality of everything, and of course everyone is in a state of amnesia as to what it is. So therefore, perhaps the AI is merely the rendering of that. It's the splitting away from the old to the new age of Aquarius. And of course it's an air sign, so it's a sign that's associated with the heavenly. It's associated, like what you see of Blue Origin. That's another thing with Blue Origin just recently, with the feathers. That's totally Aquarian. You have the feather, the air sign of Aquarius, with the blue, the water. So you have this intermixing between the higher controlling the lower through the current of the Eridanus in this case, right? And interestingly, Eridanus derives from the Babylonian Eridu, and I believe Eridu was the star of Enki, if I recall correctly. So it's the star of the Lord of the Earth, who also put in place the Gala priests. And then you have Jesus, the man from Galilee, and all of these things. So ultimately, what we're trying to discuss here is there's connective tissue between all of these things, And with that, it was a very fascinating discussion, guys, as always.
Oh yeah. No, just one note that I couldn't get out of my head from her talking earlier. The industrial age got us into the analog eras, right? And then now we're more going into this digital. I don't know how that could really be spun, but
No, the etymology of the digit is the fingers. So it's like the
yeah,
alchemical hands. The alchemical hands. So you have all of the elements. You get broken down into the elements, and they fight each other, and divide and conquer. Sorry, man. Yeah,
no, that's
interesting. It's a superb point.
yeah. No, I think I'll have to get off too. I'm gonna need to get some sleep. It was good talking though.
Yeah, brothers, lovely. I think leaving that on the analog and digital, I think that's a big discussion that wants to happen as well. So, just exactly where this is going, digital reality, and like you say, the fingers, the digits, and that brings us back to the Sumerians, right? because
Yep.
they had a 12 based mathematical system. It was all 12, 60, 5, 12, and 60.
Yeah.
And
Sexagesimal, yeah.
yeah, very interesting. I met a man with 6 fingers on each hand once, and they weren't deformed. And I couldn't figure out that he had 6 fingers because they looked perfect. There was like, his hand was designed to have 6 fingers. I've met people with 6 fingers, and it looks weird. This guy didn't look weird. Yes, Henry, I'm going to let you out right down a minute, my little boy. I hope he doesn't fall on the ground. Thank you, brothers. It's been great. It's been absolutely awesome. One thing I wanted to add was Saturn. Om Tat Sat. So the Om Tat Sat. So the Om is the manifestation of the 3 principles through sound, matter, light. And the Tat is the rulership, Yaldabaoth, okay? And the Sat is the supreme ultimate state of being, reality. So when we think of the Saturn, the urn that holds the ashes of ultimate reality, Saturn. Food for thought.
That's also, just really quickly, that links with the word Kapala in Sanskrit, which is like the cup or the head, or the canopy. And of course, that's probably where Kabbalah came from. You know, the literal study of the head, the study of the cup, the canopy, the umbrella, the shadow of the canopy. Yeah, brilliant, man. Yeah. All right, guys. Sorry, I won't keep you any longer. We'll be here forever.
Yeah. Have a good one, guys.
It's been an honor having you guys. Thank you for everybody that enjoyed the show. I hope you loved it. Check out everybody. Silas's channel is here. I better go and collect your thing quickly. Just so I can put it in here. So for those of you that have watched the show, Silas's channel is at Silas Speaks. I'm sure you'll probably be able to find it quite easily. He's got quite a big presence. And we've got here as well, Regan's channel is up here too. I'm at Bush Whisperer in here. Everybody take it easy. Don't forget to smile. Keep it sweet. Keep it real. Life is short, so stay away from anal. Seriously, it's no way to go. And women, if a man's so obsessed with it, take a look a little deeper, because I think there's so much programming going on here, and we've basically been getting to that is one way of becoming obsessed with knowledge, to the point where knowledge replaces love, and love is supposed to be about union, but knowledge is about control, because knowledge is power. So knowledge is about me controlling what I want to control with the knowledge that I have. So whenever control is the dynamic, on the physical, that's reflected as anal. So stay away from it, guys, if you want to experience the divine feminine in yourself. Girls, watch out for guys who like it. Take it easy, everybody. Keep smiling. Keep the dream alive. And till next time, Om Shanti. Big love.
Bye-bye.